people, if you're in one economic class in this country, your perception of how we get back to family values and how we get people, staying at home raising their children, it's a much different story when you're on a lower economic level where there is no fucking choice but both parents get out there
Yeah.
and raise just enough money to get by on.
But that's why I go back to what I said. When you're making life choices, teach your kids from day one the choices you make now affect you in the future. Not everybody know all the planning in the world. Some people are still going to end up with a harder lot in life, but less people could if they made choices today that would affect them in the future. And I say that because I came from two parents. My mom had me at 19 years old. Uh, I I didn't, I we went through periods where my dad made money, didn't make money. There's a lot of things. I'm not saying I had the worst childhood, but I definitely was not living the life that my children are going to experience. And all I can say to that is it would have been very easy for me to follow in those footsteps, but somewhere along the way, it occurred to me that if I continue going down this path, it's going to be this lifestyle, or I can struggle a little bit more than I already am now and go down another path that would make it easier for me. And I think that if we can just instill that in the next generation as much as possible, eventually it will get through to a lot of them, and they will say that's a good idea. But also, youth is wasted on the young. So
Yeah, I think I worry that more what's being instilled in the younger generations is a stronger sense of me.
yeah,
And
and I
that's not
true.
conducive to good family values.
that's why I say I do agree with you that parents need to stay at home. But if these parents are getting a check to stay at home,
Well, right,
I
but
mean,
I
like,
know it's a fine line to walk. 'Cause it's like, how do because then it
well, we could
again
do it
begs the
another way.
question: how do we get them back at home?
There's other ways that do it. Like in California, they're trying to absolutely get rid of any homeschool credits. But as of right now, if you're in a charter homeschool, you have like a $2,000 or $3,000 credit for the year to raise your kid. It doesn't go towards food and things like that. But there's other ways to do that. I think there's ways to repurpose the money that people are already making and give it back to them as opposed to just.
Well, but how is that any different than any other kind of subsidizing from the government? Any other kind of
Well, the way that
socialist
I look,
subsidies
this is
that
the way
come
I
out?
look at it.
I think
Because
it.
I pay
Oh, I'm sorry.
property
Go ahead.
taxes, that money, the way I have to look at it is that the money I pay in property taxes to go to the public school that I'm not using, I'm getting it back to raise my child at home. And hey, I didn't create the system, but I have to live and work within the
Right,
system
Yeah.
that I'm
right.
given. And I also advocate for people to go out and change that system so that we change that from the very get. If you, there you have to kind of work within those boundaries, but I don't think that we just continue to like, here, let's give more money. We already
Well,
have.
right, and I can understand your point there. It's just I sit here and I look and I'm like, okay, guess what? People people in Washington need to understand that as they sit there and they mouth off their speak, not everybody can be wealthy in this country. It's just not possible for everyone to be
Well,
wealthy. Prosperity is not going to be widespread throughout the country. Everybody's not going to have a seven-figure
there's a
bank
difference
account.
between prosperity and not being in poverty, and 99% of the
Yeah.
people in this country
That's
have more money than
Sure,
than
and I get it.
and than the most wealthy people in other countries as the general
Sure.
population.
But bear in mind, for the lower incomes in this country, that's because it's being handed to them in welfare checks. I mean,
Well, I
it's
think
a catch 22.
I do have something to add to this, which is that I think that we've purchased a lifestyle for ourselves that we're not necessarily deserve. Maybe deserving is the wrong word, but it's not based on anything. It's based on a fiat economy. So when it goes away, people won't be able to sustain these things for themselves. And what we traded for convenience are all of the skills that used to be basic skills that the
Mm-hmm.
poorest of the poor people knew how to do. And the reason that people survived things like the austerity of the Depression or the austerity of World War II, where we had rationing, is because, people knew how to do things. There's a difference now. People don't know those skills anymore. And, it's not like, it's not like it's not available. YouTube has, people for days who will teach you how to do all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
but people aren't interested in that. That's not we're like you said, a very focused society. Social media has us chasing the lifestyles of the people that we want to emulate. We're over leveraging ourselves to have pleasure at the consequence of the future of people that are generations down the road from us. And so it's like out of sight, out of mind. I'm never going to meet my grandchild, so it doesn't necessarily matter if I plunge them into a depression so deep that they'll be picking a living out of the dirt. And likelihood is that that grandchild is not going to have any of the same skills as the people who just 50 years ago would have considered normal.
Yeah.
And now no one knows them now. Even I make an effort to teach myself these skills, and all I've taught myself is that I don't know anything, and it terrifies me. So I'm like in a mad dash to learn as much as I can, but I'm like, how did it get so far? And it's like, well, I had so much distraction. I had video games, and I've got my cell phone, I've got my social media, and I've got all of these things, movies and books and all these things filling up my life constantly, but it's all pleasure. And
Right.
I think if we can, we're going to have a hard road where we are forced to become unaddicted from pleasure and forced to make a living instead. And that's not what's going on. We're losing our luxury right now. We're not losing our living yet.
I agree.
And yeah, so there's a difference there. And yeah, and we can say that the poorest people in America right now have more than like the emperors of the old kingdoms had. You know what I'm saying? Like Julius Caesar would have wept at the wealth of the one bedroom apartment with the hot running water and the refrigerator and the air conditioner. Like it's mind boggling.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, it makes me think about, there was one thing that Andrew Yang said, that, that he was, at one point he was preaching on, and it was that the value of an American is based off the GDP, not about what they're capable of, what they're doing, their quality of life. It's the GDP determines how, what your value, your self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
everything. It's kind of like Trump. What does he harp on? The economy. The economy's so great. The economy's so great. The economy's so great. And then it's like, well, step down here in the trenches
Mm-hmm.
and tell these people that their economy is great, that everything's great for them. There's a disparity there that this fiat economy has created,
Mm-hmm.
that is really leaving a lot of people behind and giving them nothing to look forward to.
Yeah, I think that you are making a fantastic point. It's actually why I see so many similarities between our time and that of the French Revolution. Because before all of that started, you had this enormous disparity in wealth, and you had people who had nothing to eat, and they were watching, Marie Antoinette walk by in her hairdos that took up, a two-story tower, and it's the same thing. I went to an Occupy. This kind of dates me, but I went to an Occupy Atlanta event, and I brought my camera, and there were a bunch of people in the park who were camping. And then in the distance over the campsite, you could see these great skyscrapers rising up. And I was, into photography at the time, so I was taking these pictures of these kind of like, just like shanty campsites, and rising over them is this building, and on the top of the building it says equity. And I was like, no matter
Poetic.
what, yeah, it is poetic. And I think that social people who are like socialists, although it's very easy to pick apart their ideology because it's, economically flawed, I
Mm-hmm.
do think that they rightly and correctly recognize something that's very deeply wrong in our society. And there is a conspicuous difference between the haves and the have-nots, and in the past, you can prevail to people's logic all you like with the philosophical economic libertarian theories, but what they understand is that they're struggling. And part of that is, like I said, this addiction to the pleasure that our society has, which is true. But also, there are people who can't make it because the wealth is being funneled in the incorrect, it's being misallocated and funneled into the incorrect directions. And I think that what a lot of us here agree on is that the problem, the cancer, the actual problem is that the state is misaligning those funds and not the vague boogeyman of capitalism necessarily. But I think that they do correctly recognize that there is a sickness in our society.
Well, I do think capitalism is weighted against the consumer in this country. The basic and mainly from the games that are played with the consumer on an ongoing basis, all the way from the bottom to the top, as far as whatever you're buying. Just the little mind games they play with you to get your money, right? And make you think that you're saving money and that it's more affordable to do it this way, when in reality they're just fudging the numbers around this way so that you think everything's great. But ultimately, I say this: let's stop paying government salaries to politicians in Washington and tell those fuckers, go get a job and work politics as your fucking side gig.
Yeah.
Give me nonprofit politicians in Washington. Go get a fucking job, work 40 hours a week, and then come in and politic. And then tell me, did you get a good enough job? Did you get one that's making you that 200, 300 grand you're getting a year? Or did you get something more around $60,000, $75,000 because someone doesn't trust your age, doesn't trust your maleness, doesn't trust you to be a woman and do the job? What are you going to get for a job? Go work your ass off, and then, stop taking our money, to do nothing.
That might be like asking a 3-year-old to give up a toy that they're holding. I don't know. Brittany will know about this. If you ever asked a 3-year-old to give up a toy that they're holding, which is that, they have this incentive to keep themselves paid and in the elite.
Better.
So. Yeah. So like it's self-defeating sort of on our end to hope that the state will do anything to stop its own growth, wealth, and power in any way. So there's a cycle here. There's a historical cycle here. And I'm almost of the mind that humans have almost no choice but to play it out, because it's been played out so many times. And there were probably people in every single epoch that recognized, whoa, we've done this before. We're getting ready to do it again. Hey guys, the bad shit in history, we're going to do it again. And people just plunge headlong into it anyway. And there are so many just examples of societies that have built themselves up to a peak only to eradicate it all. And maybe we need to do that. Maybe it's like a cleansing fire.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up like repeating history and that people kind of, plunge headlong into it. I think it's more out of like ignorance than it is, ignorance of history, than it is about, wanting to repeat it.
Yeah.
And not, so many people don't know, really anything about history. They might know some like surface, facts about a certain thing that they were taught in school, and that was, 15, 20 years ago even. But then there's also a lot of misinformation about history. We were kind of talking about that earlier with the Civil War. But there is so much of that. I mean, even if you look at the big thing with, lefties now is, talking about Robin Hood, right? About how, he would steal from the rich and give to the poor. Well, in the original stories, that's not the case, right? That was a Disney adaptation of Robin Hood, and that's why we all think now that that is the correct interpretation of it. That's not what he was doing, right? What he was doing was, like basically humiliating the aristocracy, right? Showing that we're all human. We're all, once you strip away the titles and the wealth, we're all the same. That's pretty much what he was, what it was about. But of course, people still use the Disney version of Robin Hood instead.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge problem. I think that people need to know more about history so not to repeat it.
Well, those are big words coming from somebody who has a title.
I think there's a huge level of ego involved with it, because instead of learning from the mistakes of the past, you have so many people that say, no. I can do it the right way. I can do the same thing
Oh,
they did,
yes.
but I can do it the right way.
Oh, yeah.
I can do this the right way. No, you fucking can't.
Yeah.
Authoritarian communism will work if I'm in charge.
Right, I'll do it, right?
Well, I
Yeah.
gotta say this though, John. Those are some big words coming from you, somebody who has a title
That's
of
true.
nobility.
Yeah, I do.
Have
Yeah,
you?
I do. I actually have it right here next to me. I can prove it.
Oh, they give you a paper?
Oh my God.
Let me
On
come
that
up
note,
with
I'll
this
be
one
right
here.
back. I've seen this, and
Yes.
they're trying not to laugh real hard in John's face.
See, Lord John, you see that right there?
Oh,
There we
well, that's
go.
Lord
nice.
John. Yep,
That's lovely that they give
that
you a
is
little
me.
paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my fiance bought it for me for my birthday. So I was like, oh, that's so
Aw,
sweet. Yeah,
that's
because
so
like she
nice.
knows I'm into like history and especially medieval history and stuff. So
Oh, excellent. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I enjoy medieval history as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, I've got another question coming up on this, though. Something that I know that Britt has answered on her show, John and Robert have both answered on their show. Jessica has not answered this yet. What do you think this
Uh-oh.
whole telecommuting thing is going to do, since it's become a more commonplace thing, to the nuclear family or for the nuclear family in its acceptance? Because we talked a lot about one parent staying at home and the end of daycare.
Yeah, people are eager to get back to their jobs and they're eager to get their kids back to school because I think being in close quarters with their family all of a sudden might not have all positive effects. I think some people will say, hey, I actually like this better, and I might decide to educate my kids at home now. But some people are, I see it on my Facebook feed. They're like, just get these kids out of my house,
I
and
like that.
yeah.
Homeschooling.
So, I don't know. A lot of, like we were talking about women in traditional roles before, I think a lot of women were stay at home mothers in the past because they didn't have any other options, and so I'm not, when I talk about, I do actually talk about a lot about traditional female roles, but I don't advocate for, forcing women back into the kitchen or anything like that, because obviously they're women whose destinies are better served out in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And it behooves us to treat everybody like an individual and allow them to reach their highest destiny and whatever they might do that serves their fellow man to the best of their abilities. And that's, I know that's bordering on that like commie speak, but like you wouldn't have that enforced by the state. You would let people figure that out for themselves. But it's allowing them to fail too. People learn a lot by failure. And so some of what might come out of this is that people are forced to stay home. Maybe they'll lose their ability to pay for daycare and things of that nature. So we're going to see all kinds of things being rearranged, and we don't know what the final portrait is going to look like. There is going to be a new normal. They keep talking about new normal, new normal. Things aren't going back to the way that they were before. There's no doubt about that at all. And a lot of that is going to, I think maybe be a positive for the way that the family is viewed by people.
But what about the thought of the idea that some women, or people, I should say, because it could be a stay at home father too, will
Yeah.
have the opportunity to have the career and stay at home now that we've all learned how effective telecommuting can be?
Right. I didn't touch on the telecommuting. Also the teledoctoring. I think all of that is amazing. We have this technology and we're not using it necessarily to its full ability because there's a lot of regulation and shit in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And the virus definitely forced the government to give up some of these, stops in the road that they had for industry to serve people. And they were like, okay, well, obviously our regulations aren't working. We're just going to have to lift them. And so now, people go, okay, we didn't actually need that regulation. And so that might open things up a lot for people, especially, go ahead.
Oh, no, please finish.
But I think that that's a great point that some people who would otherwise not be able to work might find opportunities through teleworking. That they're stay-at-home parents, but they might be able to find something to earn an income through teleworking because it's now more socially acceptable.
Well, I'll since you brought that up, I'm gonna take this moment to make a public service announcement. I put this in our Discord, the Generational Gap Discord. If you look at our channel, you'll see links to it in multiple descriptions. I work from home
Mhm.
through Upwork.com,
Mhm.
and it is one of the most robust uh, work from home systems. There are so many different avenues for so many different skill sets where you can literally make a full time income sitting on your butt at home, taking care of your kids, set your own pace. And I'm talking a wide dearth, whether it be a virtual assistant to writing code to making logos if you're an artist. I work with publishers and I do editing and proofreading and I do writing. But it is huge, and especially at this time where there are so many people that are sitting at home. I've got it posted. Get on there. Look at the avenues that are there. Build a profile. Post your resume on there. If you're good at something, I can almost guarantee you that there is work out there for you. And in the last 6 to 7 years that I've worked on the site, I have earned over $225,000 working from home.
Hell yeah.
And one of the 3 of those years was actually finding a full time job with a company as a W-2 employee that I worked from home.
My sister works from home. I work from home. I also think, just from an employer standpoint, having more employees at home, it can greatly lower your overhead cost, which
Mhm.
can go towards other things. If you have older kids or kids that are in school, working from home is an easier option. It can be an easier option. With little kids, uh, I can tell you right now, I think a lot of people are going to find that very, very difficult, because just the nature of having children, they need you. Um, but because with lower overhead, if enough people are working at home, companies might start offering things like a stipend for daycare or a babysitter. Like, we will start to see models changing, bonuses, the way bonuses are handed out and the way things are done.
Increased wages,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
which also leads to more people having jobs, more daycare workers, more babysitter, things of that nature. But of course, that would also mean, like, changing some rules in different states. Like here, you have to pay a babysitter like you would, like a W-2, like they were an
Right.
hourly worker. We need to, we'd have to deregulate some things and change some things for it to work. But I think it could just benefit it would benefit society, I think, if we could kind of go towards this model, especially what, uh, we were talking about earlier about just having parents home with their kids more. I know when my husband's home, even if he's doing something else, the fact that he's in the house, there's a different, like, vibe, there's a different attitude,
Yeah, I
different
feel
cues,
that.
the way they react towards when it's just me. And also, I think when I'm working here and the kids are doing things around me, doing whatever they're doing, if I'm working on a design or something, uh, if I have somebody else here that can watch them and take care of them while they're doing that, there's a completely different attitude. There's a completely different vibe in the house. And being able to say, I don't have to pay this much money for a brick and mortar building each month. I can put this towards my employees, which may not happen, but it would benefit the company and benefit them. Like, hey, I could say, hey, look, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars, but we're also going to give you a stipend for childcare. That could change the whole face of this country and our economy. I mean, it would just be amazing. And also, for people that care about the environment, I don't. I'm going to be dead by the time it's a problem. Just taking all those cars off the road. I'm incredibly self-centered, so it doesn't matter to me. But I'm kidding. But just taking that so many cars off the road on a day-to-day basis, it would just be like a huge impact for those people that care about that kind of thing.
They said they saw dolphins in New York Harbor because there had been so fewer ships that had been coming in through there that some dolphins were able to come in. They hadn't seen dolphins in the harbor in a really long
Nice.
time. Yeah.
As far as staying at home and working, and maybe you can relate to this, Britt. People. I think there's a stigma to a certain extent about people being, oh, well, I could stay at home and work and make $10 an hour. I could go get a job out there making $11 an hour. A lot of people don't really factor in the idea that $10 an hour at home is a lot different than $10 an hour out in the workforce. Because when you drop all the factors that are combined, how much does it cost you to go to work every day, John? You don't count because you walk 3 minutes? It's like
Not even, yeah.
2 doors down. But
Yeah.
people don't pay attention to how much money they actually spend just to get to work.
Yeah.
And spend your day there.
Yeah. I think people also don't realize how many people in this country don't work because they can't afford to put their kids in childcare, because what you would be making would be what you're paying to like a childcare daycare or something like that. I mean, my kids preschool, my daughter went 2 days a week, 3 hours a day, and it was over $500 a month. For a lot of people, that's what they make in a month. Sorry, my background got weird. I don't know how to change it. So.
But no, yeah, I mean, for me, every time, if I've got one client, if I go online and I'm working for $12 an hour, I always think to myself, this would equate to $18 an hour out in the real world. Because, at $18 an hour, I'd probably be bringing home $12 an hour after all the costs and taxes and everything, which, yes, I know you have to pay taxes, but you get to self-file. You get to take care of that on your own. But with just the cost of going to work and maintaining a job outside of the home, $12 equals an $18 job.
Also, the stress on your
job.
The stress on the body, like you're traveling, you have to get up early with this, not that everybody works this like 9 to 5 schedule anymore, but the traditional model of working was kind of based on this like factory model. And we're not in the industrial age anymore. We're in a digital age, and people can work at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, and I can speak to that actually a little bit too, just from a comparative standpoint from what happened to me last year. Now I'm not going to say where I live because it's small enough you could dox me that way, but I live southern Wisconsin, close to the Illinois border. I was working in a place in Madison. I worked there for a good almost 4 years, and from where I was going, it's 41 miles one way to go to that particular place in Madison, and then one way back. Once you factor in traffic, that's an hour commute every day. And of course, being in Wisconsin, especially going up to where my parents' house is, I need to have something with ground clearance. I can't exactly drive a Honda Civic everywhere. And I didn't really have the opportunity to keep 2 vehicles around either. So I've got a truck. I'm going to come right out and say it, because a little car would not make it up where my parents live, or most any other place that I go in the state. Plus, I do haul stuff off to the side as well. So I've got a truck, driving that back and forth. I got about 20 miles to the gallon, which is not bad for a full-size pickup truck. But still, that was starting to take a toll in the pocketbook as we were going along. I mean, you fill up the 30-gallon tank, and 8 days later, it's empty again. And you're filling up another 30-gallon tank, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I looked at the numbers. I crunched the numbers because they just moved me to a different... I'm still in the same company, but in a different location. It's actually only 5 miles away from where I live now. So I drive 5 miles to work every day, and just looking at that, like Robert said, the difference in pay that goes into that, it was like getting a $5 an hour raise just to work for the same company, for the same wage, doing a similar job, but taking 36 miles out of it every day, one way, was a huge pay raise to me. And then for people that can actually sit at home on top of that and do their work, do the same kind of thing, like you said, $10 an hour at home is like $20 an hour out in the world. And I see how that works.
And it's amazing, that, I see with everything that's going on right now, I firmly believe that a lot more companies are going to see the financial and liability benefits of having people stay at home when they realize, holy shit, 30 people in our 50 people company can actually just do their job from home. And for the employee, well, it's the same thing. You're gonna make more money, and your personal liability is decreased as well, because you're not in a building around other people who whatever the case may be, whether it be, somebody decides to go Me Too on your ass, or you break a company policy inadvertently, or something along those lines, your own personal liability lessons as well.
Yeah.
It is a great position for us to be in as far as the workforce is concerned, if we really push it and we really look at it in the right ways and handle it responsibly.
I think
Yeah.
this is you guys are definitely right that there's a seen and unseen here. And I think before this happened, teleworking was kind of an unseen benefit that we hadn't really availed ourselves of. So it's going to take, there's going to be a period of adjustment because we're so used to doing this like uh, model where everybody hauls into work and then hauls back. But yeah, I hope that people, because just in term, I was just thinking about how many less car accidents would there be?
Mm-hmm.
Just that alone, because there are, what did they say, 40,000 car deaths on the road every year? Like, how many thousands of people might not die just by virtue of not having been on the road?
Well,
Yeah,
there's that too. Just to take what Jessica said a little bit further earlier too, the toll of people getting up and going to work, just the stressful toll on the body, the emotional toll on that too. When I was in the Madison location, I worked. It was 11:30 to 8, Tuesday through Friday, and then I had to work a 10-hour shift on Saturday because I took the shift that the old Saturday guy did, and he didn't want, or the boss didn't want to go back to a rotation. So I was the place was open 5 to 3:30 on Saturday. So I was hour one way, keep in mind. I'd get out of work about 8 o'clock, and I'd have to stay there for the whole night because, well, I was allowed to go home early, but with the way everything was scheduled, it took me until 8 o'clock to get my work done. So I'd get out of work at 8, drive home, uh, get home at 9, throw some food down my gullet, watch Generational Gap.
Hey.
Then I would go ahead and get up. I would have to be up by 3 or 4 in the morning so I could make sure I got showered and cleaned up enough that I could be in the building for 10 hours. And that was, get 4 hours of sleep and then take a shower, go to work, and work. I wasn't doing crap on a Saturday because I didn't have the energy to do it, and I could feel it. And then I'd get home at 4 o'clock and take a nap for 4 hours. Then it's 8 o'clock. Your Saturday's wasted at that point. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it helps, there have been studies that say people that only get 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night live longer than people that get a full 8.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean,
So I'm going to live for
I'm gonna do
fucking ever,
great,
people.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
immortal.
Great, because I average 2 to 3 hours of sleep. So
Yeah,
Oof.
yeah. Oh, you must be a parent.
I am. I actually, when people tell me like, oh, they have a new baby and they're getting up all the time, and I'm like, oh, try having a kid with diabetes and an alarm going off all night. Like, and it's like, at least with a new baby, I knew like at 6 months or a year, it'll kind of taper off. With this, it's just until there's a cure. I don't know when it stops. But yeah, that is refreshing that I'm gonna live forever knowing that. So I think too, a lot of things for just going back to telecommuting, and if we had more telecommuting companies in place already, there would be so many businesses still running right now. We already had those models, and it was just a normal occurrence. It would be business as usual at so many more places than it is right now. And I think it's good for companies to kind of look at this and go, well, we suffered because we had to shut down because of this, or a lot of branches or a lot of segments of our business had to shut down. But if we move towards this model, we are sheltering ourselves from maybe so much fallout the next time something like this happens, because I don't believe that this is the last time this is going to happen. I mean, just
No, especially now that they know they can get away with it.
yeah. So
Well, yeah, and I think that something like telecommuting is a great way to fine tune our workforce.
yeah.
So how many people work at restaurants waiting tables that actually have a skill set that they could sit down and do from home, And those jobs are now available to someone who loves or is more suited to work in the fucking restaurant, not somebody who has a skill set and is there because of circumstance.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think a lot of people too, I think it might end up cutting some jobs. I think a lot of middle management and useless filler
Mm-hmm.
jobs that we have just to watch people will kind of go by the wayside. And I'm kind of okay with that
Yeah,
because
bunch of
one,
narcs anyway.
basically, yeah.
You know what? You know what?
But like,
Oh, go ahead.
no, just like an employer being able to have more trust in his employees without having to have a babysitter for them. Um, I really believe that most people will just rise to the occasion and they'll get the job done. They'll do what they need to do at home. There's an incentive for them to get their job done in an efficient manner because they're already home. They're not going to have to stay late. And just the nature of working at home, from what I've experienced and from what other people I think that work at home have experienced, you tend to put in more hours because, well, I'm already here. I might as well get it done.
Yeah.
As opposed to let me set this aside.
Yeah, or you're walking around and well, I'm not really doing anything. Let me go sit down and just do some work. I can put some time in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what the biggest thing one of the biggest things that it would help get rid of as well, workforce discrimination. You know, I'm 51 years old, and I tried to get a job not too long ago out in the workforce, and I can honestly say I got the impression that my age was working against me, whereas I write up a proposal online for a client, and that's what they see. They see my skill set. They see what I can do. My age, they're not asking my age. They're not seeing my age. They're so they're okay. And same would go for a woman. Same would go for, different ethnicities or different races. It will cut out so much workforce discrimination if people were able to just stay within their own confines and get those good jobs.
Yeah.
I think people will be more productive too if they're happier. And Lord knows I'm happier around my own things. And
right?
I've got 40 different varieties of tea because I really like tea. And
Right?
so
Yeah.
I can provide the environment that makes me happiest, and then I can be the most productive that way.
Absolutely.
You're not wasting time trying to get through the day because you have to be here from 8 to 4:30 or whatever. It's like, I want to get this done. I want to do my job. I think that it just streamlines kind of life and business, and I don't.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's downsides, but if the internet went down or some sort of catastrophe like that where people couldn't communicate and do their job from home.
I do honestly believe that if the movement to an online workforce is successful from this, if it really pushes to that, I do believe it might be the impetus for the nationwide Wi-Fi that has been talked about in Washington, et cetera, to get past, and eventually just say fuck you to all the big corporate internet providers and get a nationwide Wi-Fi that would support the national workforce, because so many more are now needing to be at home working because it's the smartest avenue of working.
But are you really willing to give the control of that kind of infrastructure to the government?
Dude, we give the control of our infrastructure to the government all day long. Like you said,
I'm
right
not
here.
willing.
Here it is, right here. Here's my ID chip. Everything the government wants to know about me or get to, they've got.
An unseen consequence of this also might be a baby boom, because there are a lot more people going to be at home for a nooner.
Oh yeah. But infidelity will go down, so that's a good thing too.
But this country,
yeah, we're not.
this country might need a little bit of a baby boom, because the last couple of years they've been reporting we're dying faster than we're reproducing in this country.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with a little baby boom? Kind of balance the numbers. I mean, how are we going to compete with China if we don't get to 1.5 billion people?
That's definitely where I think my encouragement comes in, because I think I want to destigmatize motherhood a little bit. Just like, it's not so bad to be a mom, and it's not a life ruining thing if you become a mother. And
you internalized misogynist.
Yeah, I know. I don't have full disclosure. I don't have children of my own, so that's why I would kind of like stumble around with some of these topics about kids. But I would like to. But I also think that I remember, being a very young woman in my early teens and my teens and my 20s, being told that babies would ruin my life. And here I am at 36 now trying to have a baby, and it's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm in a financially stable position, but now, the clock is
Right, and
touched.
now it's like
So
you're old enough that having a baby might just ruin your fucking life, right?
that might ruin, yeah, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So my fertility doctor was very positive, but that's her job. So but yeah, so I always say, we could destigmatize motherhood in a big way, and that would help a lot with the idea that we will raise our own children, and that whether it be the father or the mother that stays home, just that the idea of having children is not something that's like a chore, and that it's something that's like a life fulfilling thing to do.
I
And I
think
think
there'll always be that. Sorry.
yeah, of course there is. Yeah, but we also like farm out, I think, a lot of our child raising to like public
Right.
schools
We
and
do. Yeah.
daycares and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it might be, beneficial to our whole society if we embrace the raising of children as something that we should do personally.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I
yes.
think we have this thing that it just comes down to like I'm better than you type of thing. I don't see it so much with men, but I see it with women just being I actually have left every mom group I've been in on Facebook and Twitter. I don't interact with other mothers at all. But
The
just
sanctimommies.
yeah, the Sanctum. I was
Why?
actually in a group of Sanctum called Sanctimommy something, and they kicked me out because I
Because
called
they're
them out. They were the most
sanctimonious.
sanctimonious women. But I think women do this to each other
Yes.
constantly, no matter what side of the aisle they are on, no matter what
Yeah.
their
Mhm.
religious views or background. It's always whatever they've chosen in life because we feel it's not good, we're not doing enough, because from the day you're born you're told like you need to do all of these things and you need to do them well and you need to be pretty while you're doing them,
Yeah.
Right.
and you are failing in one area where, sorry guys, like I hate to like throw you under the bus, guys have a ton of pressure, but it doesn't seem to be in that aspect, because if a dad goes to work, then nobody says, well, you didn't spend 18 hours today with your kid, also you didn't clean the house, you didn't do this.
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But women seem to do it to each other all the time. Like I see stay-at-home moms that'll be like, well, I'm here with my kid, and I see moms that go to work and go, yeah, I came home, cleaned the house, took care of my kids, and went to work all day. It's like
And
we
I worked out and I
yeah,
had my
and
eyebrows
I'm
done.
like,
Yeah.
I
well,
I I
I
would I would posit that that very thing is one of like kind of, for me, really the only negative repercussion of second wave feminism. I think that it started back then where,
Mhm.
we saw that rise in the 80s of the working woman. And then and yes, saw a lot of disparity between working women versus moms. And I'm better than
Yeah.
you because I go out and work like a real woman should. I'm as good as a man because I'm out there working.
Yes.
You're a mom.
Yeah.
And then the moms are like, no, I do a noble job. I do, this is, you know, uh,
like yeah,
I think that's where a lot of it
Well,
is rooted.
it's
one
also has to do with the fact that like women from as soon as they start, puberty, basically they're in competition with one another.
Absolutely.
For obviously the best mate. Who's gonna be able to provide whatever. For just like a subconscious kind of deal. But
Mhm.
that's why they nitpick at each other. And if I'm wrong, let me
no
know.
no no
No,
like
you're
Um,
right
Catty
on.
bitches.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah.
bunch of catty
yeah.
bitches. You're catty bitches.
I
That's all it
wanted
is.
to kind of throw this out there just as like a sidebar type thing. One of the things that kind of attracted me to the liberty movement on Twitter and online, these women are the first women that I've encountered where it is like love, you do you. They
Hmm.
don't kind of throw each other under the bus. And I don't think women do that like all the time, everyone. I'm not saying all women are catty, horrible, whatever. I've just always tried to align myself with women that love other women and want to
Mhm.
uplift them. I just
Hmm.
happen to see it naturally in this movement. Obviously, there's a few
Yeah.
bad eggs. I don't know your take on it, Jess, but I mean,
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a
Yeah.
couple. But also, I think it's because
And they shave their legs. That's a
yeah.
bonus for me. That's
Yeah.
That they do.
Those
That they
nice.
do.
excuse me. I'm going to go say hello to my better half. She just got
But
home. I'll be
like,
back in a few
Oh,
minutes.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah.
I also, oh God, go ahead, Brittany. I kind of lost my train of thought.
no. I was saying like I could just rattle off names of women that I've met, me and you, for
Yeah.
example. I mean, I couldn't I couldn't pick a better person that I would say like, I want to see this person. I want to see the things that this person has to say reach a larger audience. There's no jealousy. There's no,
Oh,
you know,
that's so
I mean,
nice. Thank
yeah,
you.
like, and there's so many. I see a lot of women that are like that in this movement that are kind of like, let's build each other up and kind of have that real, um, like where we say like when one of us rises we all do, like we all pull each other up or
Mhm.
whatever type of thing. And I like that because I've seen it so much in other movements where, that's true to an extent, but I don't want you to step on me more, or I don't want you to,
Yeah.
I mean, and nobody wants to be stepped on, but
When I was traveling in like progressive leftist circles, we kind of all had the attitude that the only women who existed on a plane other than our own were these like docile, simpering women who just like didn't have any agency of their own. And oh, God has told me my husband's my commander, my captain, so that's what I do. And
I know
I
that woman.
found, oh, do you? Okay. And isn't she a lot of fun? But what I found was that there were women who were very protective of their individuality. And that's what I think is the difference in the liberty community, is that we all sort of recognize that we're individuals. The individual is the greatest minority. So it doesn't really matter what like identity boxes you check off.
Mhm.
It
Well,
matters what you are as an individual.
well, I
we
can
don't.
say this, Jessica, that in spite of everything, when you were talking about fertility and everything, there was actually something you said there that I could relate to, and I was very surprised when I said that.
All
You
right.
said that your fertility doctor, that's her job, is to make you feel good about your chances with fertility and be happy about
Yeah.
everything. I very briefly dated a fertility doctor for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
You know how if a guy is kind of really aggressive and strong and jacked and everything, they call him a great big Chad and he's walking testosterone?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
woman was what I would picture walking estrogen to be. My
Okay.
God.
No,
My God.
I have a really great lady who's working for me, and there's a lot of scientific options to try. So, if you're a woman out there, and I also said that I would talk about this more because I think there's a stigma around it, and that there are so many women who are going through the same thing that you're going through. So don't be afraid to talk about it and reach out, because you're going to be really surprised that you're going to find somebody who's like, oh man, I'm going through the exact same thing. And when you realize that, it helps a lot.
Yeah, I never had any trouble getting pregnant. However, I had plenty of trouble keeping a pregnancy. So we
Right.
went through that, and you start to feel like I'm broken. It was so bad that when I actually had my son, when I was pregnant with my son, I just I was afraid I wouldn't be able to bond with him because I could not accept that I was going to carry a pregnancy to full term.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and you think nobody nobody knows what this is like, but not in a selfish way so much as like an embarrassing way that you don't want to talk
Yeah,
it sometime
there's
about it because
shame.
you're also told, you know, your whole life, try not to get pregnant, try not to get pregnant, and then like you when it's not working the way
Mhm.
it should, it's like, well, what's going on here? And I think finding a community of other people to talk to, because like I believe infertility and then multiple miscarriages, obviously they're two very different situations. They're both hard.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
and just having people that have gone through that exact thing, um, it makes it, I guess, easier, or not easier, it makes it less crushing at
Yeah.
some point where, you have people that kind of, okay, I get what you're going through. And I think things like that, uh, it really kind of helped me to humanize, because some of the people that I did talk to are people that on a religious level, on a political level, we are miles apart. But this is something that two women, two humans going through this same thing, it humanizes us, and we're able to bond and connect over that and see the
Yeah.
morality or the humanity in each other.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true because all of the ladies in like this support the fertility. So, guys, I'm so sorry that you're like sitting here for this, but the ladies in my fertility support group, like politics and stuff, never comes up, and I think that it if we actually started talking about this stuff, we'd probably be ripping each other's throats out within like 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
we do have this problem that's one of the don't worry, I'm not going to get all Christiany, but one of the one of the most common problems in the Bible is infertility, and it's something that's talked about over and over and over again. And you're like, wow, like women have been going through this is a
Mm-hmm.
something that other people have experienced and gone through and felt grief over for a long time. So you're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to reach out. Community is so important. Like I think that sometimes as like liberty minded or libertarian people, we downplay communism a lot, that we forget to upplay community. And
Yeah,
like
volunteer. Yeah.
voluntary community is so important. It's not something that I think that we can survive without. Like the human is a social animal, we're a community animal, so we
Yeah.
like need each other. None of us can like do this by ourselves. And I know like if someone could point out and be like, that's commie speak, and it's like, no, it's not. Like
No.
community is not the same thing as communism. We need community, we need each other.
Yeah, and I see that even like in the type 1 diabetes community. My son was diagnosed at 3. We thought he was going to die. The doctors told us he wasn't going to, I don't want to go into that because I'm going to start crying.
No, don't. Yeah.
No.
But basically, without a community of people to talk to about that, I don't know how I would have got through that, because you, just like with infertility or miscarriage or anything else, there was a lot of people that told me, hey, it could be worse. And I wanted to tell those people, like, not right now.
Fuck
No, it
off.
doesn't feel that way. And even if it could, I don't want to know. Like, so what? Like,
Yeah.
suffering is just because it's on a spectrum means that like only the worst of the worst get to suffer for it. I almost lost my kid. I feel like I can have a pity party for a minute. But having a
Yeah.
community of people that you can talk to about those things, it changed the way that I was able to deal with it. And I look at some of the things that they say now, especially going through like with Bernie Sanders talking about insulin and AOC talking about those things, and a lot of people agreeing with them in these communities. I can look and say, I think you are so wrong. I think the way that that you want to handle this is so incredibly wrong and not the way we should do it. But I know how you feel. And
Yeah.
there's something about that. I would never want suffering of infertility or joblessness or diabetes or cancer. I never want anybody to go through that. But there's something to be said for humans that can suffer together and see each other's humanity. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that because we're all going through this type of pandemic right now together, that maybe we can look past how we want to solve the problem, how we feel this problem should be solved, and just look at each other like, hey, we are all humans and we all want to solve the problem. We just need to kind of figure it out. So
Yeah, well, look how quickly the blue collar trucker became the hero of America, like
Yeah.
Right. And the grocery store's employees, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I'm
these are,
thanking them. I'm like, oh, you
oh my
guys are
God.
great.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I find myself walking out of a convenience store that I go to almost every other day, thanking convenience store clerks for being there for me and doing that shit. It's crazy. But do you think, I mean, at the point that we've gotten ourselves in our somewhat egotistical, self-centered, selfish society, how long does this have to go on to really instill that sense of community? The
um,
Yeah,
full
I
sense
wonder
of
that
community.
too. I think that's a good question. I wonder that too.
I actually think it starts pretty quick, but it wanes. Is like, when is it going to wane? Kind of.
Yeah.
I think if we look at the news cycle we're going to see people fighting. But if you look at communities outside of the Karens that keep calling the police on people for going for walks, most people are like trying to kind of help one another, at least what I've seen in my community and what from people that I've talked to. And after this, we'll all kind of have that understanding, like, hey, we all went through this together. But I don't think that this is like, I think that this could also be easily turned into a 9/11 thing very easily, like where we all came together and then we all started fighting about how was this handled? How should we go forward? Blah, blah, you're wrong, I'm wrong. So
Yeah.
we kind of just.
Aren't we already at that point? I mean, this started at that point with who's handling it how and who's doing the right things quick enough and everything. I mean, is that rhetoric, is that narrative that's continuing to go on as everybody's trying to figure out who to blame? Is that going to be the impediment that keeps us from coming together on this?
Hopefully not. We have 5 people right here, right now that can choose not to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well, also they say that it's only like 20% of people that's even on Twitter. So you can't look at like Twitter or the mainstream media and say this is any kind of representative. I think like I look outside and I see all of my neighbors are talking to each other. I've met 4 people on my street that I've never talked to before in the 2.5 years that I've lived in this house.
Now, was that on you or is that on them?
Well, it's kind of on both because we're all just, we're home a lot more. So we're all out there working in our yards and, somebody's dog runs across and, oh, sorry. And you just meeting each other naturally. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, I know all these members of my community now that I am worried that when everything gets kicked back up, we're all just going to kind of retreat back into our own worlds. And that connection that we made will have amounted to nothing. So, it's both good and bad because that means that the economy kicked back up and everything went back to normal and that people get to continue surviving as they had. But I think that we can turn this little break into something good too, if we want to. That I know them now. I know their names. I know what their kids look like. I know their dogs' names, so it's a little bit better a place, a little bit better in some ways.
Some control over that too. I mean, you can keep that dialogue going and you can keep that sense of community going. I am very lucky. We lived in an apartment for years and years and years. When we bought this house, all of our neighbors kind of knew each other. The guy that lives 2 doors down from me, he actually built this community. So our neighbors were already close. As soon as this started, we already had a Facebook group going. It was like, who needs toilet paper? Who needs to go to the store? I just went to Target and I got an extra Tylenol. Does anyone need it? I mean, we literally had a neighbor tell us, like, don't worry, my husband used to work for Big Five. We have plenty of guns. Like, it was like the weirdest like things that you wouldn't expect, but it kind of solidified like these are the people, this is the group of people that I'm with, and we're going to take care of each other. And it started because it was cultivated at one time it was cultivated and we just decided to keep it going. It would have been very easy. This past year, it was super windy. We always have a block party on Halloween. We weren't going to do it, but we were like, no, we're going to do this. At Christmas time, it was we all just huddled, all the neighbors huddled into my house so we could have a gingerbread party because we couldn't do it outside because it just happened to be raining the day we had planned it. But it's more work sometimes, but it's cultivating actual relationships. And I think that ties into, like, we talked about skill set versus amusement. Like, we've replaced amusement in our society with what used to be, our time used to be taken up with skill set. Our time used to also be taken up with talking to other people, dealing with other people. I mean, on a daily basis, for me, it's work. I can talk to 1,000 people on Twitter, but to go outside and have to talk to my neighbors, that means I can't, I have to put a bra on and pants. And but also I'm in control of that. We can keep those things going. And it really, I think, starts at a micro level with the individual.
Yeah.
And I love that you were out talking to your neighbors, Yeah.
So. My neighbor asked me if I wanted her kids, though. So I think she's ready to get them out of the house.
Most parents will do that to any single person that they meet. You want some kids? But this is, there's a mindset that goes along with that. And I think this is something that we have to teach our kids. I'm the type of person, and I've been like this ever since around my 30s, as I started, living different places and started thinking about family. I make it, whether it's been an apartment or a home, I go to every neighbor around me and introduce myself. I immediately go find my neighbors and get to know them a little bit. Let them know that I'm there. When I lived in apartments with my girls, um, you know, I knew that if they went outside, because I had met these people, because I forged a relationship, I now had multiple sets of eyes on my children
Mm-hmm.
that would show
Mm-hmm.
concern for them and for myself and let me know if something happens if I'm not seeing it for myself.
Yeah.
My ex used to bust my own. She's like, why are you taking food over to the neighbors? I said, because you break bread with your neighbors. You make
That's right.
relationships. You form these bonds with people around you because this is a community.
Mhm.
And it's safety, well-being, everything that factors into it. And if we could teach our kids this, as opposed to teaching them, you know, live in your social media world so you don't ever actually have any real physical friends. You're just friends with everybody in the world. Like, who do you know personally that's on those goddamn sites, right?
Yeah.
How many of those people do you actually know personally? Go out, meet the people around you, build that
Mm-hmm.
community like Britt's talking about, where things are happening on a community level that doesn't require your government coming in and helping you out, that doesn't require the police to be called.
Mhm.
Hey, I saw somebody walking by your car. Wow, thanks neighbor for calling me up and letting me know that somebody was outside my house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't need to have a doorbell cam that the police can hack into. I've got
Right.
neighbors that are looking out for me.
And it,
It's
yeah.
crazy.
And I think it shows us, at least for me, the way I grew up, my mom was very much like, everyone's a pedophile, everyone's a stranger, everyone's going to hurt
Mm-hmm.
you, the world is going
Right.
to hurt you, it's all evil. I
My
don't want
parents were
my
like that too.
I
Yeah.
don't want my yeah. I think the 80s and 90s there was a lot of that, like Jessica on the milk cart, or what was it? The girl
Yeah.
on the milk carton.
Little
Was her name Jessica?
I think Jessica was the one
Baby
that
Jessica
fell
in the
down the
well.
well.
Yeah,
Baby
Yeah.
Jessica was in the well.
and also Wells, strangers in Wells. It is bad, and you need to stay away from them. But I think teaching my kids, hey, there are people that you can go to that are safe,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's a sense of community, so that they don't have that fear and anxiety. Because, well, I absolutely believe that it is good to be cautious. It's great to teach your children about, tricky people or stranger danger, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the buzzword is this week. There's You also need to teach your children there's a balance, that people are good, this is what you look out for. Because if not, you instill this deep seated anxiety and
Mhm.
fear in them that again affects them long term. And we really need to think about what we're doing in like a more nuanced way, as opposed to black and white. And knowing your neighbors is a good way to do that. It's a good way to show your kids that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well,
I
that's interesting
yeah.
for me too to hear that because I remember hearing that from the PSAs too. So I think that was driving a lot of that. The everyone's a rapist or
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to throw you into a van or so. I remember hearing a lot of that when I was a kid, but I never experienced that. I grew up in a village of 395 people. I knew everybody in town, and there was no
Yeah.
need to worry at all because I mean, where are you going to hide somebody if they kidnap you?
And also, you probably knew who the weirdos were, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you know your neighbors, you know who the weirdos are. Obviously, there's always that one news story where it's like, he was a good guy, kept to himself. Well, it's like,
Right.
well, we know
Yeah.
the neighbor that keeps
Those
to
are the ones you got
himself.
to watch out for.
Yeah, like, but people that know their neighbors tend to know these things. Like, we
Well,
had just 2 days ago, we had fire trucks and stuff, and it was like within seconds, I knew, like, okay, this neighbor whose name I'm not going to say is having this issue. They're going to go. It's like, it.
Mm-hmm.
We know we can send support. We can, go. The rest of us can make sure that the rest of the people at that house who need a little more help at this time can have that help. And I don't know. I know, especially in libertarian circles, or tends to be this like individualistic, like you said, like anytime you do this is communism. But there's something to be said about libertarianism working better when you have a sense of community, and
Right.
Yes.
when
Yes.
Well,
you
yeah,
You
that's
can't have the one without the other. You need
yeah,
both things.
right. Yeah, exactly. And that whole like, oh, that's commie speak thing, unless it's, sarcastic, then that's just ignorant. Because, I mean, for one thing, just because an ideology has a lot of incorrect answers for
Mm-hmm.
problems doesn't mean that they don't recognize an actual legitimate problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lack of community is a legitimate problem.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's
Right.
a reason why people gravitate towards socialism and communism, because they need that. uh,
Yeah.
they feel like they're missing that in their life. We talk about like leftists or things like that a lot, and my brother, who is a very constitutional conservative, said there's something to be said, though. There's a reason why there's bleeding heart liberals. There's a reason they want to help people. So I think we just kind of have to remember, like, they're trying to solve a problem in a
Mm-hmm.
way
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want it solved, but it's still a problem.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
Well,
the way to kind of ratify that is to fix the problem yourself, so that we don't need outside, we don't need the government to come in and say, this and this, and you do this, because it just makes it easier.
well, I
Yeah.
have to say, growing up, I had the fortunate slash unfortunate position of being raised on both sides of this, how we perceive community. I grew up in a household with an alcoholic grandmother who loved to beat children and a grandfather who was a pedophile. But this was at a time where no one talked about these things. You didn't, this didn't happen when kids came forward. I remember sitting in Dr. Renfro's office, the school counselor, and saying, "This is going on at my house."
Mm-hmm.
And my Catholic church going grandfather comes in and says, "No, that's not happening. He's just making that up." Well, sure enough, that's believed because this wasn't something that was talked about. And then there was a shift that happened where the band-aid got ripped off and it was exposed that these kind of things were actually happening in hometown America, maybe right next door to you. And much like the panic that ensued with this, a societal panic kind of happened to where all of a sudden now you have to move into this place where you can't trust anyone around you. You can't even trust the other parent in your house necessarily because that may be going on and you don't know about it.
Yeah.
And it built this, pull back from community, stranger danger. You don't know what these people are like. You don't know what's going on. And it was a weird transition, and it also fed into this mindset, and I've dealt with this, that because I was a product of that upbringing, I am automatically assumed to be that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even people that were going through that, and when they reached their, there was this mindset that, it was impossible to break the cycle. That didn't exist. There was no any of that. If you were abused, you were going to be an abuser. And again, fed into that stranger danger, distance yourself from community because
Mm-hmm.
that's just what it is. It's an amazing thing to look back on and watch how our society transposed itself into the present day. And social media feeds into that so well because it is now the best tool to keep yourself as distanced from society as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they would feel about me saying this, but they're not here right now. So both of my parents had a very similar upbringing to the one that you just described, both in terms of Catholicism and familial pedophilia going on, both of them. And both of them were able to break that cycle, and none of us children experienced anything like that, as far as I know. I didn't, and as far as I know, my siblings didn't either. And so I do know that they have that stigma with them because of that. And they did an enormous thing to break a cycle, which there are a lot of people who don't realize that the choices that people are making are thrust upon them sometimes.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of personal strength and courage to stop cycles, whether they
Yes.
be teen pregnancy, the things that go on in the church. It's uncomfortable for me to talk about. Sorry, I'm stumbling all over this, but I think that when you have a band-aid ripped off, it's extremely painful, but
Mhm.
then air and sunlight can get in,
Right.
and then you can start to heal from it. And sometimes, when we realize, oh, something terrible is happening, we like jerk the wheel in the other direction, and
Right.
it's, lose control of the car. But we do need to have the band-aids ripped off.
Well,
And
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, and it's not always
absolutely.
done exactly how we would want it to be. I mean,
it's painful.
uh,
Yeah, it's extremely
I
painful.
I can uh, I understand as far as I want to really go in public with what you're saying.
Mhm.
But
Well, I'm going. I'll say this, Brett, and to you as well, Jessica. You know, have being a survivor of it. I remember very specifically having a conversation with my brother, in which he caught me talking about my past with
Mhm.
someone, and he was very angry with me, and he's like, "Why are you talking about that? You
Mhm.
just need to bury that and not talk about it." And I said, "No, fuck no." I said, here's what's happening. I talk about it and I build the strength day in and day out. Every time I talk about what the fuck happened to me, I build the strength to keep talking about it, to keep telling people what happened to me. I don't care what you think about me
Mhm.
after the fact. You want to call me disparaging things because of what I went through? Great. But when I talk about it, those people that hear it, that are in a similar situation, may step up and open their fucking mouth, because we are in a day and time where people will listen to you if
That's
it's
right.
real and it's happening. So I will continue to talk about it. I don't care if somebody knows that I spent the first 14 years of my life sucking my grandfather's dick. It happened.
Mhm.
And I came through it. And I'm never going to do that to somebody else. But I, by God, want to make sure that somebody else might gain the strength to say something themselves and
Mhm.
get the fuck out of a situation like that.
that is
And
amazingly brave, and I, you know, for
And
you to, it's brave, and it needs to be said that you aren't what happened to you,
yeah,
right,
and for you to put that out there and tell people that, because people need to be reminded of that, and you are under no obligation to be the person that does that, but the fact that you do, it amazes me. I like you more as a human being for being that brave. um I don't even have words to express how.
it's hard. It is. I can tell you it's hard. I deal with it on a daily basis still. I know that the repercussions of these things. I hate people. I fucking hate people as a whole because of this. And I know that I'm the most cynical person. And I know that I'm just, I sit and know that I'm judged. And I hate that I'm judged, by those naysayers and those people that just can't understand. They have no, I don't want to hear you say you understand. No, you fucking don't. I don't want to hear it. And but it's got to be talked about. It's got to be said. It's got to be known. When I tell somebody, no, I will go and meet my neighbor because I can guarantee you, I am the person that will know what this person is like. I will
Mhm.
know to watch my children around this person because I can see the signs, because I was trained to be this person. I had all the training in my life to be these godforsaken sick bastards. So, yeah, and
Absolutely.
it's tough, and I know, I get it. People who've been through it, I will never judge someone who doesn't open up about it and really let it out and isn't public about it. I can't judge that, but don't fucking judge me because I do. Those
Amen.
are the people that kill me.
Amen. There's so many, especially men. Women, it's almost expected, and it's easier for us, I would say 99% of the time, to come out and share that story. Not that I'm saying it's
Yeah.
easy. I don't want people to feel like I'm saying, oh, it's so easy, but it is almost, we have the stigma even today in our society that men are not allowed to talk about these things, and you're just supposed to
Bottle
uh,
it up.
keep bottle it up. And it is so amazing and brave for you to do this. And as it just the way that you parent your children by being able to say these things out loud, I think it changes the relationship that you have with them for better. You know, it's like I keep trying to stop myself because I am not as brave as you, and I don't
Well,
want to
No,
delve
and,
into things that are too
also,
personal. But
you are brave though.
you
You're
have
living
a
your life.
you
You're
have a
still living
different,
your life.
but it's like you're able to. I would just say this: a father that had gone through that and is not a that breaks that cycle but doesn't talk about it. It changes the way they interact with their children forever, and they constantly question if they're doing the right thing. So they tend to keep their kids at arm length, and it and if a child doesn't know the reasons behind that, a lot of times it adds a lot of changes.
yes,
Hypothetically, I'm not
absolutely.
talking about anyone in particular.
No,
So
that's actually extremely relatable to my own experience, having both parents gone through that kind of thing and both extremely filled with stigma because of it. And it took into I was almost in my 30s before I found these things out and explained so many things about my own childhood that I didn't understand. Because when you're little, you see your parents as like these all knowing authority figures. And then you find out later when you're an adult that they're human beings
yeah,
and they went through terrible traumas, and that affected the way that they dealt with their children, and it made me understand them so much more.
yeah,
And just on a side note, he had said that he felt like he was a cynical person, and I just want you to know that you don't come off as cynical at all.
you
In
don't
fact,
try
I
to.
was really enjoying how positive I felt you were, and I was like, here's a really positive like person who has forward, what's the word that I'm looking for?
I
Just like not doom and gloom, like you see
Yeah,
positivity in things, and I don't see you as cynical at all.
I didn't either. In fact, I felt like when we were talking earlier before any of this started, how compassionate you come off juxtaposed
Mm-hmm.
to me, who's on the other end saying like, let it all burn. I don't see you as a cynical person at all. I see you as somebody that's very compassionate and cares about people and humanity. And I just, I would absolutely agree with Jessica on that. And I hope that that doesn't ruin your brand because
No, 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 no. No, it's, I often, Ed can speak to this, John can speak to this. I'm often playing devil's advocate because when it's all said and done, it is this idea that, going back to something I said earlier, it is fine to sit in your ivory tower and talk about how the masses should feel about things
yeah,
and how, but no, people have their own individual feelings, their own individual persecutions, their own individual traumas, that no matter how similar they are to the guy beside them, they are completely different things. It's always individualized.
yeah,
And so somebody has to speak to that in the conversation and has to try and tap into that, so that their voices are heard, because not everybody wants to speak out or are often told not to speak out, that it's not a valuable opinion, because still to this day there is that stigma about not talking about it, that my
Mm-hmm.
ex, the mother of my children, was trying to stop me from telling my children about it and tell me how wrong it is, to educate them on this, about who I am and why I am the person that I am, the things that made me who I am. And I'm like, how can you tell me this? How can you say you have no fucking idea? No, I understand. No, you don't. You don't. You've never experienced anything near this in your life. I know your life. I know what you went through. We know each other.
yeah,
You can't understand, and you really can't understand the importance of me telling my children who I am and how who I am is going to protect them in the future.
For both the parent and the child, it's important
absolutely. Yeah,
because
yeah,
yeah, it helped me understand my parents that in a way that I didn't know before. you know, and it wasn't just one, it was both of them. And that was shocking to learn. But so many things about the way that my childhood unfolded like clicked for me, and it made so much more sense. And I understood them as real human beings. And that just made our relationship closer. And I feel much more connected to them now that I know about their lives. And you know, of course, these aren't things that I experienced, but they're the pain translates down through the
Hmm.
generations
Oh
because
yes.
we affect each other's lives. And
And
so like, why are they with this way? Why did my parents behave this way? You know, and we internalize a lot of that. Like, was there something about me that, you know? So now I understand, and I can, and as an adult I can look back on those things. I'm older now than they were when they were parenting me.
Hmm.
So I can look on these young people and see that they were dealing with things that people that age, you know, you got to process it. You got to deal with your life. And the fact that they were able to raise children and break these cycles that are probably going on for multiple generations, I see them as nothing but brave and heroic. And I was glad that they trusted me to let me know that those
Well,
things
and
about them.
I think ultimately it's a responsibility of parents or anybody. Honestly, anybody, whether it's your significant other, or family that you're living with, or children, you have a responsibility to talk to them about these things, because they are a direct recipient of your internalized pain and experience. They are
Yes.
always going to be a direct recipient of that.
yeah,
And if they don't know why you
Yep.
are the way you are, then you're setting them up for failure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Hmm.
I think that voice that we hear inside our head that tells us who we are and what we're capable of, I honestly believe for most of us, it's not our own voice and the things we tell ourselves. It's the things that we were told over and over as a child and how
Absolutely.
we interpreted them. And
And our response to it.
yeah, and our
Yep.
response to it. And um, I think just on a different level, um, even a parent that, and I'm not blaming any parent that can't tell their children these things, or it's too
Right.
painful to them. I would never say that. But a parent that keeps that bottled up, and like Jessica said, they they tell their kids those, they parent their children in a different way, to where you wonder what's wrong with me.
Yep.
And at the same time, to further that, when things, not that that parent has done, but that other people have done to that child, it changes the response that that parent has, a lot of times, where they might be outraged, or they might not be able to talk about it and tell you
Mhm.
things like, well, you know, uh, similar things have happened to me and I'm fine. And you are then told to bottle that up because that's how you deal with things.
Mhm.
And sorry,
No,
it's,
don't be sorry.
We're getting to the real stuff here, you
I
Yeah.
guys.
know. Can we talk about the economy and burning down the
No, the last thing I'll say on it is this. In regard to that is, I think that one of the biggest impetus for me was that I really felt like if I did not share this with my children and only let them see my actions based off what it had made me, that I would kickstart the cycle in their life again as they move forward in some way, whether it be through anger or, whatever the case may be. That,
Mhm.
and I think that's where a lot of people, that think they keep it internalized, and they think, okay, I've broken the cycle, but I don't have to ever talk about it. I don't have to let it out.
yeah,
Well, yeah, that shit gets to a boiling point, and it affects how you deal with people.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
yes, you can restart that cycle if you're not
Mhm.
careful.
Either that, or you have to be a perfect parent that makes no mistakes, and everybody knows how easy that is. I mean,
Huh. Yeah.
just something I will share with everyone. I'm in therapy. I'm dealing with things that you deal with in therapy. But like, I initially, when my son was born, I really felt that stress of like, I'm not going to do things the way that were done, like how it was done with me. I'm just going to be a perfect parent. I just can't make any mistakes. Well, that snowballed because as it would turn out, I made mistakes. And then I felt shame about those mistakes. So I made more mistakes to cover the mistakes. And it's just, it goes on because you can't keep that up because you think you're okay. And sometimes you realize, like, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay as a single person ignoring it, but I'm not okay as a parent because I can't tell if what I'm doing is, and not in any sort of like abuse, like sexual abuse, any type of way like that, but I can't tell if my reactions to things are because that's what a normal parent would do, or if now I expect that I have perfect children and the world has to see I'm fine. So my kids are fine, everything's fine. And if they're not fine, then like they better toe the line because we have to show the world that we're fine because I've told myself that. So now you're
Mm-hmm.
expecting your kids to prop up this narrative and this lie you've told to yourself. And a child can't do that. A child can't be that for their parents. And
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
it sounds so intense all in one. It's not like I was like screaming at my kids or being like,
No.
which I have. I've yelled at my kids. My neighbors will all tell you.
No,
But
it's a huge battle when you have children. And I was 17, 18 years old when I had my first child, and she's in her early 30s. She lives in Michigan, and I now have a grandchild, and we don't talk because I was 18 years old and I had a child, and I said, I was still in internalization mode, and I was like, I can't trust myself to raise this child. So I pieced the fuck out. And we still don't have any more than a social media
Yeah.
friend relationship that we don't talk.
That was my
Um,
mother too. That's exactly the case with my mother. She was 17 years old. So you're definitely not the only one who took that path, and as the child in that relationship, like, I do want there to be more with my mom, and I know that it's hard for her. So I
right.
try to give her her space too. But I do think that no matter how far away you get from each other, that you can always find a path back because you're still her dad and she's still your daughter, and you guys will hopefully find that path back to each other because no matter what, you always have that connection, you always have that tether forever. And yeah, so don't give up. It might not be close right now, but you guys can
yeah,
find
I
that.
wasn't close
Yeah.
with my dad for years, and on the opposite of that, I felt like for way too long I was way too close with my mother, where she told me things that an adult, not her child, should know. And I would like to say, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel personally, but just for me and the vibe I'm getting from everyone, I don't think any of us are saying, oh, our parents were horrible people.
Oh no,
Maybe,
my
No.
grandparents were
no, I think,
horrible, despicable
yeah, I
people,
would
but
say your grandparents,
they
I
were
would say that,
horrible, despicable people. But
I guess, like, for like what I'm saying, for like, I'm not saying, look, I think my parents were awful. I think my parents didn't have the tools to deal with the issues that they
Mhm.
had.
Yes,
And I just
that's
want to
hitting it on the
clarify
head. Yeah.
Yeah,
that right now because I don't want it to turn into like, oh, if, I'm like this because of that, like, which that is true, but also they were dealing with the tools they had, and I know that they love me. Two things can be true at once.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and it's given me a different, perspective. For a long time, I
I,
just I realized uh, me and my dad were never going to have a relationship. He just wasn't capable of it, for whatever his reasons. We would have a surface relationship, and as I've gotten older, and now that I have kids and other things that have happened, and him, us talking about more things, we do have a better relationship. And I also have a better
I'm
relationship
so
with my
glad.
mom now, knowing that some of the things that she dealt with maybe aren't appropriate. They're not appropriate to tell a child at a certain age.
right.
Like there's an appropriate time and a nuanced way to do things. It's not all or nothing. I don't think any parent or any person has to say like, well, you start letting them know every bad thing about you, or
No.
every shame, everything you're feeling at 2 years old. And, that at 14 years old, they can know all of the things that maybe I shouldn't even know at 37 about my mother's life that I didn't need to know.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying she didn't have the tools. And I don't have all the tools. I mean, what do I know? I'm messing it up with my kids. I'm sure they're going to be talking about me
That's
on
that's the
some,
life of a
you know,
parent, though. that's that's
Yeah.
that's
yeah,
everyday parenting. Oh, I'm fucking something up. But you know
yeah,
what? But you know what? When it's all said and done, yeah, there is no cookie cutter recipe. What I did learn is this: the conversation happens naturally.
yeah,
It just happens when they are ready for it, because you
Mhm.
you just don't even realize this is where the conversation's gone, and I'm talking to somebody who is actually old enough to comprehend it, because it will, with a parent and a child, that conversation will happen
Mhm.
naturally at the right time, as long as you don't force it, like you were saying.
yeah,
If you just let things happen, do your best as a parent, you'll have those conversations when it's time.
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, and as far as I can't talk about it from the parent perspective, but I can definitely talk about it from the kid perspective. And I know I've already said this before, but when I found these things out, as shocking as they were, they really did help me understand my parents, and it put things into perspective that I realized how very young they were when they had me. And now that, like, I'm 36, right? So I'm older than my parents were when they were trying to
Mhm.
raise me. And I recognize the challenges that they had to deal with. And I just have so much respect for them now, that what seemed like harsh things before make are put in perspective. And I realized, like, the tools that they were dealing with, they did an amazing job, like, as far as us kids go. And yeah, I have gratitude for my parents for finding the strength to tell me. I really do.
And I'm very happy that you had the kind of parents that didn't use it as a scare tactic
Mm-hmm.
for how you need to live your life.
Yeah.
Here's the boogeyman. Oh, be scared of it. No, this is what happened. This is
My
how we
dad's
go
motto,
forward.
yeah, my dad's motto for us kids is, I want to be me and I want you to be you.
my
And
Yeah,
dad
that's
so it
is
was
kind of
all
how it
like,
was with my
that too.
parents too.
yeah.
That's how my dad is too.
So it's like, what religion are we? It's like, what religion do you want to be? It's like,
Right.
what should I do when I grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? Like, it's on you.
Right.
You're the individual. You got to figure your life out for yourself. And that's
Yeah,
the greatest gift, I think. Of course, I'm not a parent again, so I'm not speaking from a parent perspective, but from my parents' perspective, I'm glad that they gave us that gift of individualism.
yeah,
Right.
I would agree. I remember being 10 years old, and I was getting ready to be baptized, and my parents loved Jesus. I mean, they were the ones taking me to church. They're all the things, all the Christian, on fire for the Lord, all the things that you would say in Christianese and speak. And,
Christianese, I love
I
it.
love
and
that.
I mean,
That in my pocket for later.
yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Can I borrow that?
yeah, use
John,
it.
add that to our vocabulary
I
words,
mean,
please.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Um,
if you're in Christian
Yeah.
circles a lot, they speak in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm nothing against Christians, but anyways,
I do.
I was going to get baptized. And my dad said, well, do you know why you're getting baptized? And I was like, because I love Jesus. And are you not going to be proud of me? And he's like, well, it's not about whether I'm proud of you, which is a whole nother can of squirrels
Right.
for a daughter that only wanted her, dad to be proud of her. Um, but he was like, do you know what other religions say? Do you know what you believe? And I was like, we're Christians. And he's like, no, I'm a Christian. He's like, and if you think that you're a Christian just because I'm a Christian, then you are not a Christian. And you're going
Right.
to go through your whole life thinking what I believe at the time he called not cultural Christianism, but basically a cultural Christian, like where if somebody
Yeah.
asked you, what are you? You would say you're a Christian. Um,
Christian by
and
default.
yeah,
mhm.
like that's just a box you check on of things. Of course I am, Um, and it really, at 10 years old, it's one of the biggest lessons my dad ever like imparted to me, like, was you need to find these things out for yourself. And he told me at 10 years old, if you do this and you're doing this because you think you're a Christian, we've told you this, you can live your whole life thinking this and you can still go to hell. That's some big words to
Holy
hear at
shit.
10
Yeah.
years old. He's like, you can die and you can go to hell. And I I mean that you don't
It's a hell
forget.
of a lot to take in as a
It's a
kid.
lot to
Right.
take in as a kid, but I will say this: I don't think that it was bad. I know the type of kid I was. You know, hey, um, it stuck with me, and it was a really good
Yeah.
lesson. And there was only two lessons that my dad taught me of all of them that I really remembered, and that was one of them. Uh, and I think that it's good to impart that kind of individualism on people
Mhm.
because it gives them a sense of responsibility. And I don't know if any of you have noticed it, but it seems like we have a lack of responsibility and a
Yeah.
huge
Oh
surplus
yeah.
of people
Yup.
blaming the other. So,
Well, I remember my ex saying that she was going to, after the divorce, she said that she was going to be taking the girls to church with her parents. And I specifically asked her, I said, did you tell them they're going to church, or did they ask to go to church?
Mm.
And do they know why they're going to church? Because I never, in the 9 years that I was a stay at home parent with them, I did not talk about religion. I didn't talk about, when it came up, if it came up, they brought the conversation to me. And I
right.
said, there's a lot of things out there, and you're just going to have to look at it, and you're going to have to
Yep.
decide what you believe in. But, I can't tell you, I don't believe in Christianity. I don't believe in God, but that's me.
Yeah. And I
You
think
have
that,
your choice.
Yep.
I mean, I would say my dad, from a different perspective, um, he taught us about Christianity. We talked about the Bible every day. We learned about it. He taught us what he believed was right and correct. And I think that sure, it probably shapes a lot of my view. But I also think that part of being a parent is that you teach your kids what you think is the right way.
Mhm.
But there's also, you have to strike that balance where you say, this is, I mean, there's a Bible verse that says train them up in the way they should go. And a lot of people think that that means train them in the way you think they should go. No, you teach them what you think is right and correct, and then you trust them to make the decisions that are right for
Yep.
their life.
Give them the
And
tools.
yeah, you give them the tools, and then they're going to have to do with them what they will, and you strike that balance. Um, I mean, I got lucky in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, my biggest problem with children and religion is it becomes an indoctrination the younger they are when you start taking them to church and doing those things where it's you kind of take the choice away from them. You really do. It's there's it's kind of like building the myth of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, and this idea that they're completely real. They're at a young formative age where you know well, is it real? These are questions we have to decide ourselves when we get
Mhm.
older. There's a lot of religious people growing up that aren't religious now, myself included. You
Mhm.
know, but not everybody's going to have their eyes opened with self-awareness in that way if too much indoctrination is done at a younger age.
I would say I would have to disagree because I think that you don't believe in that. You don't believe in Christianity. I could kind of say, well, you're teaching your kids not to believe in religion. So it's like, and then one of the big things that I don't like conflating is when people say it's like teaching them about Santa or the Easter Bunny, not to kind of, I don't want to start an argument, but I don't believe Santa and the Easter Bunny are real. I believe
Right.
Jesus Christ is real. So I don't
Right.
tell my kids that Santa and the Easter Bunny are real because that's lying to them. When I take them to
Hmm.
church and tell them about Jesus, I'm telling them about things that I believe to be true and right and correct. I'm not teaching them about bullshit that I don't believe. Does that make,
Yeah.
I just think we should separate those
Yeah.
two.
Well,
Uh,
see where well, and I really was only using those as an example, talking about the imagination of children and where they can, where they put their basis of reality,
Mhm.
versus where your basis of reality is when you get older and you're using more critical thinking. But I know that I was that way, but I balanced it my children, when they first started going to preschool, they were going to a preschool at a Christian church that did not flood them with, it wasn't, they did a good separation of church and state with the preschool, though they were being introduced to God. They were being introduced to the idea of Christianity. They were exposed to it, so that there was a balance versus, when they got older, I was able to tell them, well, this is just how I believe. And what you're learning from that and from me are the basis for where you can form your own opinion as you go forward.
Yeah.
I think though that but okay, I agree with that, but also, were you telling them about, Buddhism? Were you telling them about
Yes,
Muslim
yes,
and
I talked
other things?
I
So
talked to
it
them
really
about the
has to
Mormon
be a
faith and
balance
everything.
that struck. And in that same vein, I think we do that with children all the time with everything. We teach
Mhm.
the way
That's
I
true.
teach my children, whether they should share or not, what their body belongs to them or not. We impart our values on our children,
Right.
with everything. So I don't see why religion would be so different, except that I understand that it can be overbearing and overreaching. I happen to think I'm particularly good at striking that balance, and I'm not saying that in a vain, egotistical way. I just think I am. My husband happens to be Jewish, so our children get a lot of information on Judaism also. In fact, most of the books they read, that are religious books, are from a charity called PJ Library that sends books on every Jewish holiday, things like that. Mainly because I don't know as much about that religion. It's not innate like Christianity is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm learning with them, and they ask me questions, and I answer them in a way that I can, in the most truthful way possible. But
Right.
me, like every other, fallible human, I'm not going to get things 100% right all the time. I'm
Right.
sure there's things that they're going to not agree with me on, and that's okay. But I really feel like as a parent, it's our job to kind of say, to impart the things that we think are right,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
to teach our kids the right way. I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong. I'm saying I really think you're doing the same thing I am, is just imparting what you think is the right thing.
Well,
So if I can, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I have kind of the reverse perspective of you guys, is that I was raised in sort of a atheist or agnostic household.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came to Christianity later in my life as a fully grown, fully matured adult. And so I have taken in religion as a much more personal experience, a philosophical experience. And it used to be, not that very long ago, that religion was almost entirely also a cultural event. Like everyone around you was the same religion that you were, and you were kind of expected to go through these rituals and types of things. And now, over the maybe last 20 or 30 years or so, at least here, religion has become much more personal, and that each person can kind of explore around. I explored around in Buddhism. I explored around in Wicca for a little while. Just you can take your sort of time philosophically with it, and it's not something that's expected of you, which I think is a good turn in our society. That you can, even though you're Jewish or your husband's Jewish and you're a Christian, you guys can find a balance in raising your children. And it used to be that used to be something that was unthinkable. Like a Jew couldn't be married to a Christian because you're just
Right.
different people, And so it's not the same anymore. Like it doesn't have to be representative of everything that you are. It's just for a lot of people, it's a philosophical way of being. And most religions, have a good basis, a good philosophical basis. Treat each other properly, treat others the way you want to be treated, care for widows and orphans, care for the poor. These values are universal. So whether you pick humanism, or I'm not sure how you would identify as atheist or humanist or what have you, but almost all philosophies contain at some level this thread of that we need to take care of one another, and we need to love each other, and that's the most important part. for me. Is like whatever you subscribe to, as long as you subscribe to the idea that we should treat each other well, don't hit people, don't take their stuff, right? You know, like that's universal. And I think that no matter what God you frame that in, it, as long as you're on that page, then you're a brother of mine, then you're a sister of mine.
Yeah, and whether or not I was successful, I did, it was very, I was very specific. It tried to be very specific with my kids, and in the idea that, I know I told my children more than one time, I may not be right. Just because I don't believe in God doesn't mean that's right. And there is nothing wrong with you believing in God. But you need to understand, what I am teaching you is that there are people out there that believe in God, Allah, all these different things. And then there are some of us that don't believe in it. And, I put biblical texts in their hands at a young age when they were reading. They had the Bible stories. They were exposed to different religious aspects. I didn't hold them back from it, you know, because I constantly told them, you're going to have to make this decision on your own as you get older, when you can rationalize and find out what is best for you, what you want to have faith in your life. Some of us choose to have faith in ourselves. Others put their faith in a spiritual being. Others put their faith in nature and witchcraft. It's a very diverse world out there. you know I couldn't not, I would never want to not be honest with them about that aspect of myself, along with any other.
And I applaud that. I absolutely agree with that. Whether we agree on what we believe,
Right.
spiritually, what I think we're kind of both getting at the same thing is that we have to teach our children what we believe is maybe the truth, or what we like. I don't think any one of us is saying we're going to go into parenting and teach our kids uh, something that we think is not right or not the truth. So if someone was to ask me today, or if my child came up to me today and said, "Hey, Daddy doesn't believe in Jesus," and my child has asked me this, and he said, eh, you know, "Is he wrong? Is he right?" My response as a mother and as a person trying to be as honest with my kid as possible would say, "I believe he's wrong. I disagree with him on that." And I think that it is just as important for me to say to my child, "I disagree with your father, who I love more than any person on this planet. I disagree with him on this aspect, but I still can love him. I can still see him as a human being. I still value him as a person. But I believe that there are absolute truths and lies and in between." I think it's really important that my kids can see that, because I don't subscribe to the line of thinking that, like, everyone's gonna, everyone's gonna go to heaven, or everyone's gonna go to hell. Like, whatever that like, whatever you believe is okay. I don't believe that, or else I wouldn't be who I am. I'm not saying that other people should believe like I believe. I'm just
Right.
saying I'm not gonna kowtow, or I'm not gonna tell my kids that I think something's okay that I don't. But I'm
Right.
also not the type of parent that's going to say, "Well, you can't believe that. You can't be Jewish. You can't be a Buddhist. You can't do that." And I know that there are parents that do that. I know there's parents that do that in every religion, every race, every creed, all kinds of parents. I'm not that type of parent. I'm just not where I'm all the
Well,
kids are okay type of
well,
parent.
as long as you're teaching them the right thing, that love supersedes difference,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's kind of what we're getting at. I think my kids see every day. Also, I should clarify, my kids have only been to church like one time, uh, because I think that they're too little at this age to understand a lot
Right.
of
I agree.
things.
Yeah.
And I also do not trust, because of things that have happened in my life, I don't trust them being in a church inside a child daycare without me. So,
Right.
so a lot of what we talk about is at home and what they see culturally. My kids have been to a temple more than they've been to a church. Um, so what I'm getting is exactly what you're saying, is that love does supersede, like, you can disagree with people and still love them. We don't have to believe the same
Yeah.
way. I can still love you. I can still accept you. I don't have to accept what you're saying is truth.
Mhm.
I don't have to believe it. I can tell you, hey, that's bullshit. But I can still love you and see that you're, the humanity can see that we agree in other ways. I, I mean,
I
I
if
don't
I
know.
if I could just turn it a little bit, I would say that my parents are still trying to be that way with me because they're both very left-leaning, hardcore statists, and their daughter has become an anarchist. And so I'm trying to be like, don't call the cops on your neighbors. And they're like, oh, you're crazy and your anarchist ways, but we still love you. We'll see you at
I,
Thanksgiving.
my mom
Right.
literally just told me on Twitter yesterday that that I need to stop doing this and just vote for Trump. And I was like, Mom,
Thanks,
I
Mom.
literally had to tell my mom, Mom, I'm gonna block you on Twitter if you don't stop. Like,
Right. I mean, this is one of those things where I think that, a lot of children as are can grow up, particularly the ones that are taken to church from a very young age. I mean, you see people that start taking their children to church before they're even able to walk
and I think
and that
that's
kind of
fine
thing.
too. But
Well, but the expectation, but they're also teaching that this is the way, this is the way, this is the path, this is all there is.
Mhm.
You 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 run the risk of taking free thinking and decision making from them because it's look, this is the path, this is the only way to think this, and I'm not saying everybody's that extreme, but there are those people that are that extreme that, if you're not going to church with me from a very young age, you're going to burn in hell. I don't want your soul to be damned because you're not going to church, because this is the only way. Nothing else exists. There is no other right answer at all. you know
well, yeah, and I think we see that in everything. I would tell my kids that, just like my dad told me, like, hey, you can go to hell because of this. Like, but I get what you're saying. There's a difference between me imparting what I believe is the truth and me forcing
your
my
truth
kid
on
to
them.
believe my dogma. However, where I stand on that is I think that taking your child to church from a very young age is fine. I actually think the opposite. When a child gets older, when a child gets, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, when they say, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't believe this, that's when I think you kind of turn and say, then you don't need to come with me anymore. Then you
Right.
need
Did
to,
did y'all
I,
ever see? Sorry, this is about
no,
exactly what you're saying. I didn't mean to interrupt you though.
no, you
Um,
should. That's fine.
did you see that video of the kid telling his mom that he was an atheist, and she started screaming at him, "Well, you're not going to get any presents at Christmas because that
Mm.
Yeah, that's
holiday is about
it.
Jesus. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're not getting presents." And I was like, "Lady, like
Right.
you,
That's the people I'm talking about.
Yeah, and
Those
I
are the
yeah,
think that
people.
that's, I don't know that that's the majority though. I think
No, no,
that's a
no. And I won't
minority.
say it's the majority, and that's what I say. I know it's not. Not everybody's doing that, but there are people that do that, and I think that
yeah,
it does more damage to the decision making capability and the free thinking capability of children when you are that hardcore about it. Because for whatever whether you're just so fucking devout in your following, or that you're just brainwashed into believing it. I mean, people said that shit when they were living in David Koresh's camp.
yeah.
I mean,
You can be that
Mm.
way about any idea though when you think about it, because I
Yeah,
think that those people, if they were really into knitting, they would just be like super extreme knitters.
yeah,
Like
all the
it
time.
doesn't matter. They're just like an extreme person. So no matter
And
what you
I,
put in their hands.
yeah, and I will say I see this all the time with Christians, and it's one of the things that it's a pet peeve of mine. It bothers me so much. I see in Christian groups and people that I know in real life who tell me that I am a mean mom or bad parent because when my children ask me, "Is Santa Claus real?" I said, "There's a story of Saint Nicholas." I kind of went into it. I didn't know the whole thing. I said, "We can look it up. Is Santa that comes down your chimney real?" I don't believe that. But if you believe that, that's okay. I literally told my son at 3, 4, 5 this year, if you believe that, then you believe that. I do not believe that's true. I've never seen that. I've never experienced that. I don't believe Santa is real. These it's an offshoot, but it's like you want
You're telling
you're
him,
imparting this Christianity that you're trying to talk about truth and love and Jesus, and you're lying to your kids, and then you're expecting me to go along with your lie. And then
yeah,
when your kids get older and ask you tough questions about God and Jesus, you're expecting them to believe you when you fed them a stream of bullshit for the first whatever, however long kids normally believe that stuff,
Yeah.
who aren't emotionally scarred like mine are for not believing in Santa.
Yeah, it's funny. I want to say my one of my daughters was it 4 years old? Was she 4 or 5 years old? Very soon after she started pre-K, somebody ripped the Santa Claus Band-Aid off for her.
uh,
But the beauty of it was, she's like, I know he's not real, but can we do Christmas like he is?
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure, you can get presents from Santa. That's great.
And I don't think that parents that tell their kids that, I'm not saying you're horrible parents. I'm not saying do whatever you want. I don't care. Do
Right.
whatever you want. But, and I've told my son too on multiple occasions, you don't have to lie if a kid tells you that they think Santa is real, but you also don't have to go out of your way to tell them that Santa is not real.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
can be kind and you can be honest. And um, I don't know. I think that I'm in the minority when it comes to kind of trying to strike that balance sometimes with kids, although not in this group. It doesn't seem like that. It seems like we all, me
people
and
wrap up their traditions and their personality. So it's like if you say you don't want to do Santa and Christmas, you're like insulting their mother and their father because
Mhm.
Yeah.
my mom and my daddy did Christmas. What are you saying about them?
yeah.
It's like we don't have to take everything so personally. People do that with everything, politics, religion, just with the kinds of foods they eat. You see the way that people fight on Twitter about food, and
Yes.
some of that's real
Yeah.
aggression.
Well,
like
some of that comes from the fact that some of the cultures it literally comes from the idea. Well, my mama said alligators angry because they got all them teeth and no toothbrush.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
The
It's
instant
definitely
you
a
hear
thing.
someone around here say "my daddy" or "my mama," something sanctimonious as fuck is about to come out of their mouth, and it's like I do not care what your stupid daddy thought about biscuits. Okay, like get out of my face.
And I
I,
feel like,
Just real quick, let me jump in just because we have another $50 donation from an anonymous
hell
donor.
Yeah.
yay,
Thank
50.
you
So,
guys so much.
Are we getting
yeah,
closer to that 500?
We actually got
well, yeah, we're about 150 away.
we actually got a
Keep
$10
thinking
donation
that.
we didn't talk about either.
From
We
who?
Which
did.
one?
Robert Dufault.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you,
Fair enough.
Robert.
Yeah, there you
Are
go.
you sure
You're
it's
the
not
man.
Robert? Are
What?
you sure it's not Robert Duvall?
Nope, pretty sure
Oh,
it's
that
not.
would be cool,
That'd be
right?
That would be cool, but it's not.
Do we know who
Somebody
Robert
Aw.
needs
Dufault
to,
is?
somebody needs
No,
to
I actually thought it
like,
was you. That's why I didn't.
Yeah, so did I.
Since when
Yeah,
was
that's why I
my
didn't mention it.
You know my last name.
Sounds like a
And
totally
everyone
real
knows your
name,
last
though,
name
doesn't
now.
it?
Yeah. Well,
Robert.
I thought it was like misspelled default or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
You know who I feel worse for at Christmas time? Jewish kids.
Oh,
Because
Yeah.
there's got to be a ton of them that just look at their parents and go, Santa Claus just brought my friend a fucking Xbox One, and all I got was this stinking dreidel.
Well,
No,
plus they have to rely on gifts from a small piece of crap and a Santa hat.
Right? And the dreidel doesn't even have a remote with it. Come on.
I will tell you this, and maybe it's just my husband's family. We have had to pare down the Hanukkah because there is some like leftover residual guilt or something going on, or childhood issues. My kids get so much crap at Hanukkah. It is ridiculous. And I, for the first couple of years, wanting to be like, well, we celebrate both. We have Chrismukkah in this house, blah, blah. I got my kids like 8 days of crazy gifts, and then culminated this greed and like just materialism with Christmas, which is just more gifts. And in the last couple of years, I've decided that like I don't care that much if they think that these two holidays are on equal scale. Christmas clearly gets more gifts. Deal with it. You get bored games at Hanukkah. That's how we roll. But I think that it depends on the household. So again, I'm completely biased. My husband's family is mostly we're all from Los Angeles. They all have upper middle class incomes. It's different. I'm sure there's homes where it's not like that.
Right.
I'm trying to combat that. So
Well,
The kids
and
I
just-
feel bad for at Christmas are the kids who have birthdays close to Christmas because that is
Yeah.
a chip.
my son's
Yeah.
birthday is
Ah.
New Year's Eve. So
My
Oh
wife-
man, that's
Oh,
pretty
man.
cool though. He's
Yeah,
gonna
well,
have
kinda
some
cool.
wild birthdays, that boy.
Right.
we decorate the tree. Again, my guilt. We redecorate the tree and make it a birthday tree. So
Oh, that's so cool.
I kind of, yeah. So
And,
like
and,
it.
and out to the chat, Midget, I was being intentionally facetious. Just FYI. Yeah, no, it's funny. You know, there's an irony. My wife's birthday is the 27th of December,
oh, gosh.
and she has a daughter whose birthday is on the 29th. And
Oh man.
she's always separated the Christmas and birthday for her daughter, but
But she
because
doesn't do it.
but her daughter when she just gets her one Christmas present at Christmas, like, here's your Christmas/birthday present. It's like, has she not told you shown you how this works all these years? I said, I'm like, you don't do that, not especially to a woman. I mean, you might be able to get away with a guy, but you don't do that to a woman. You just don't.
Aw. Yeah, that's a rough one because I have a summer birthday, so it's like my year gets split up between birthday and Christmas, and I get two big fun things. But...
Mine is too. I'm in June, and I'm like, this is great. I
I'm
love.
Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I go to Mexican restaurants on my birthday, and they hook it up.
Oh, that's
Hell
pretty.
yeah.
Awesome.
Somewhere around 40 to 45, it's just ties.
Yeah.
From then on, it's just ties or
that's all
aftershave.
That's all I get for my dad is ties.
I know.
What the fuck is up with that? Okay,
I don't know what to
ask
get
yourself
him.
th-
I don't. My husband buys all my dad's gifts. His birthday's December 15th, and so is my brother's. And my dad always, like, he made it very clear when we found out my son was supposed to be born on Christmas Day, and he was like, he cannot have the same thing. It's, I always had it was like the whole sob story. So my husband makes sure that my dad always has like a bottle of whatever it's called, Kirk and Sweeney rum, and a whole thing.
That's cool.
Just the whole
Yeah.
thing. So where I'm like, I don't care. It's not my birthday, but it's not about me.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of people sort of in my age group have gotten to be like, I don't really want to celebrate my birthday anymore. And I'm still like a freaking teenager about it. And I'm like 37! And like, I don't care. I embrace aging because not everybody gets to do it. And so,
Yeah.
every time you do it, you're leveling up. And I'm a big video gamer, so I like to get to the next level. And I'm like, yes, next level, 38, here we go.
So, do you guys have your
real-
masks, by the way? I just was looking over on Twitter while we were talking about this stuff.
Am I supposed to have a mask?
Not you,
Well-
but the two gentlemen
okay.
over in Florida. Because which county was it? It's one of the Orlando counties, Osceola County.
Orange, Osceola. Okay.
Osceola County has mandated mask usage outside up to a $500 fine if you do
Good.
not wear
Not
one.
my county.
They're a bunch of
They did
goddamn
that in parts
rednecks
of
anyway.
California.
Bunch of rednecks.
Bunch of statists over there.
Hey, real quick,
Lord.
Ed,
Yes.
you're going to be here for a little bit, right?
hmm
All right, because I'm going to pass hosting on to you just in case anybody shows up. I am going to have to walk away for about 15 plus minutes. My wife would like to eat a little bit of dinner with me, and I'm starving because I haven't eaten all day. So if you will all excuse me for a few, I will return, and maybe in a better mood.
Manja, manja, manja.
He's gonna have a quick.
Watch your language.
Hey, turn your camera off
Terrible
this time.
boomer dad jokes.
Well, I can now because I'm no longer the host. See, that's what happens.
Oh.
So, since I do have a strict anarchist here, and the other trend that I saw over on Twitter was Save the Post Office here, have you ever heard of the concept of postal banking?
What?
Postal banking.
No.
So, last year, towards the beginning of the year, Kirsten Gillibrand introduced a bill into the Senate to expand the services of the U.S. Postal Service into personal banking and savings accounts for people. This was highly championed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who went on to Pod Save America to sing its praises and say that banking is racist because not everybody in the poor communities can get access to a bank, and they need a bank that's backed by the government.
Banking is racist.
You know, that might be a fun game for us to play later. I think we should play a game later and we just name some mundane thing and then come up with why it's racist. I think that would be a lot of fun to do.
Yes.
Well, we gotta wait for Jessica to catch her breath first.
Play that game. I want to play that game. I don't have leftist ideology, so I never get to play that game, and I want to play that game.
God.
Yeah, see, like, I think it was like Jessica was saying, you know, I came from the left as well. So,
I think
yeah, I
most
can
of us
absolutely
did.
play this game. I mean, I was never that far to the left where I was like, oh, everything's racist and everything, you know, no. It was, you know, it was more
find it
economic
odd
than it
that-
was social.
Yeah, I got pretty far down that rabbit hole and I didn't know shit about economics. So it was all identity stuff. And yeah, I'm going to be great at this game. I'm going to smoke you guys at this
Oh my
game.
god, I'm so excited.
Right?
Because I came from the right, like, and it's odd to me that you guys all not from California came from the left.
Well, I'm
Well,
from
mine
the
was
union
more-
left, you have to keep in mind, not the identity
Oh, that's
politics
right.
left.
Mine was more rebellious. Mine was more like, you know, screw you, mom and dad. I'm going to do my own thing, you know, that kind of deal.
That's
Yeah.
right wing
Yeah.
now.
And then
Probably
mainly
has-
not knowing what I was talking about as well. That contributed to it a lot, you know, not knowing
Wow.
anything. So,
So
and then then I started doing like, you know, philosophy and started reading a lot, you know, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, this is bullshit. But anyway, yeah. Ed, do you want to come up with some mundane thing?
no, I
They
want to hear
don't-
what the anarchist has to say about putting your money in the hands of the federal
All right,
government.
fine. All right, we'll do that in a bit then.
Which one? Brittany, because you're an
Yeah, which
anarchist
one?
too, right?
I am an anarchist. I'm trying not to
Is it me? Am I the strict anarchist here?
Yes.
anarchist.
Your
Ah!
Twitter name is
clearly-
Anarchy Toward.
In the
Okay, all right, that's
anarchist
fair. Yeah, that's-
capitalist.
My at fucking sucks. I am an anarchist, but I thought maybe Brittany was too. I didn't know specifically what
mean-
your affiliation was.
I am, but
I just
not
assumed
from
because I liked you that you were an anarchist. No, I'm just playing,
That's
girl.
a secret.
No, you know, I that's simple for me because fuck the post office and this shit needs to be shut down. It's inefficient and it's a breeding ground for, you know, we have a term called going postal because, you know, it's a horrible place. We can do this privately very easily and we don't need to create a bank out of it to make it more self-sustaining in some way. Yeah, there you go. See? I mean, we don't need we obviously don't need it. Everything can be done through FedEx and UPS and all that stuff. They'll do it a lot more efficiently. Fuck the post office.
So
They do actually. I worked for UPS for a very, very short time, but they were actually taking a lot of the packages from the postal service and delivering them on behalf of, you know, through UPS.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you even there for? I mean, UPS can deliver letters and bills and things like that.
They're trying to make themselves more useful by saying, "Oh, we can create a banking system out of this," and it's like, all right, yeah, maybe you could, but no one needs that.
I think Britt has something to say.
well,
Sorry.
I just want to be the dumb one here, and it's not new to me. I usually am. I was under the impression that the post office doesn't take any tax money. They don't take any money.
Oh.
That all of their money comes from stamps. I don't fucking know how it works, but the money, but they still get government money somehow, and I'm very
Yeah.
confused on how that works. So if someone could explain it to me, because I don't think I'm the only person watching right now that doesn't know that, or maybe I am. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but I am from California, and the public schools here aren't the best. So
Yeah, they're heavily subsidized, and it's not on the outset they're supposed to be functioning as a business where they are taking in money to self-sustain themselves, but like they were built entirely by federal money.
Yeah.
And the stimulus package, the $2.2 trillion stimulus package, is something like $25 million earmarked for the post office. So it's like they're definitely a recipient of a lot of federal money. And I think that people keep them alive the same way the people in the UK keep the royalty alive. It's like we have this idea of the noble the noble post worker or whatever, our post office, our U.S. post office. Like, it's a very romantic idea to some people, oddly enough. And I think we keep it. It's like a dying animal that we keep alive past its time. Like, obviously, it needs to be put down, you know. But yeah, they do receive federal money.
A lot of
They're
it.
supposed a lot of it. They're not supposed to appear that way. They want the appearance of a business, so they charge people for things and they all those kinds of stuff. But yeah, they're definitely just like any other publicly subsidized entity. They're no different. Yeah.
So stamps are not fully funding the post
Oh
office.
God, no.
Oh God, no.
No, 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 no.
55 cents. I just want it clarified. I was going to try and explain it, and I realized that I am way underwater with trying to explain how that money gets, because this is something that you hear every single day, or not hear, you read about every single day on Twitter. Every time it comes up, people say the post office is not funded by the government. So I was hoping somebody that was more eloquent than me could explain how that's just not the case.
Yeah, I know. I don't have any legislation in my hand recently except for that stimulus bill, but I know that stimulus bill has a large chunk of change going to the post office. So not that, I'm sure they haven't also been affected by coronavirus or whatever, but like the post office, they had to they had, for the longest time, they weren't running on Sunday, because like out of tradition they didn't run on Sunday, and then the private carriers came in and they were going to run on Sunday. So like this old antiquated like bullshit is still trying to like, so oh no, we're going to deliver on Sunday now. And it's like, we've gone way past you, old man. Okay, sit down. It's a very romantic thing to remember the Pony Express, but this is just not, working for us anymore. We've moved beyond it. And it's just a proof in the pudding to me that things can be done more efficiently by the private sector.
Well, you think about some of the things that go along with this too. I mean, it was a couple of years ago I saw a meme that showed a bunch of snowplows plowing out the interstate, all in a line, and the caption on the meme was "Socialism to the rescue." And I'm like, that is not social.
Yeah, no, it's not, because they contracted those plows. Those plows all likely belong to a private business.
No.
And they get government contract. Now they have, I guess technically usually it's the case that they're the only provider for the state. So the state will pick one company, usually run by the brother or the cousin of somebody who's in the state government, and that will be the sole provider. But they do contract. And so there's like sanitation, for example, all your garbage being carried out, it's technically being done by a private entity, sort of. They're private in the sense that they're taking in their own money and running as a business, but all that money is coming from the state, and it's like guaranteed, and they can raise the prices and stuff. So have you guys ever seen Kitchen Nightmares with Gordon Ramsay?
No.
All these chefs, he would go in and he would try to save these failing restaurants. And these chefs, he would always ask them, is the fish fresh or frozen? And these chefs will say, well, it's fresh frozen. And Gordon Ramsay's like, that's not a fucking thing. And neither is public-private. Like, that's not a thing either. It's like saying fresh frozen. It's like, I always think of Gordon Ramsay every time I hear public-private. Like, that's not a fucking thing.
I actually have worked for more than one company that, anybody that's worked with government contracts. And you can be assured that, like, the way that they'll run a contract is they're going to pay you way more than they should, way more than the job is worth, because it's not their money, because when it's somebody else's money, who cares? And then what they do to kind of lock these businesses in is say, but you can't do X amount of business with anyone else. Not that's competing with the government, nothing like that. Just, we want to make sure that you're getting paid by us, because then you are essentially a branch of the government. And it's a really common thing to see a company that will have, I actually worked for a parking lot company, where they will have, 10, 20, 30 contracts, and then they go into a contract with the government, and the government will say, oh, we'll pay you for, 20, 18, 19 of them, but you can't do business with anyone else. And that's kind of how the game works. Then you're locked in. Then you're stuck, because you have to keep doing business with them, because all these 18 clients that you had before that you're now contractually obligated to let go of, how are you supposed to get them back? And so private public is, I I feel like that's the biggest trap. That's where I look at and go, "Oh, the government's the mafia." I mean,
Yeah,
they're
Hmm.
You
dead on.
guys must
It
do
absolutely is.
you guys must do snow removal differently down in the south for what little bit of snow
we
that you
do.
get.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
we
imported
don't.
up there to you.
We shut down. The entire city shuts down. The city of Atlanta, so here's a good example. The city of Atlanta had 4 snowplows.
Mhm.
So when like Snowpocalypse 2014, the whole country laughed at us for that shit, but it was actually really scary. So they only had 4 snowplows. I lived in downtown Atlanta, and we couldn't get our car out of our driveway for 5 days. And there was only about 3 days worth of food in the house. So after day 3, shit got pretty real. And we ended up walking. Yeah, we needed cigarettes, so we were like, we got to go to the store.
I didn't even know snow was real, so
Yeah.
I've only seen it on TV.
It's super scary. Snow is super scary. Yeah, I grew up in Michigan, so it wasn't like I wasn't like panicked or anything like that. But the people who lived in Atlanta their whole lives, it's just not something they're used to dealing with or driving in. And what nobody realizes about that is that the news had told us all that it was going to snow at 8 o'clock that night.
Mhm.
So everyone went to work because we were thinking we'll all be at home, we'll all be in our driveways long before the snow ever comes. Well, the snow came at noon. And everybody freaked out and went onto the road at the same time. They let the schools out, everybody left work, and the roads slowed down and were in gridlock for. My friend was in his truck for 12 hours, just stuck on the road in the same spot, and he ended up spending the night in a neighborhood's. You know how they have little pool houses, that like for each neighborhood. He ended up they came and told people who were stuck on the road that they could sleep in the pool house, which was nice of them to do. But yeah, nobody had any way to understand how to deal with that, you know. And that's an area where I'm not going to be like I blame the government. Like we don't get a snowstorm like that, but once every 30 years. Like it doesn't make sense for us to have snowplows. So when we get like a freak snowstorm, it's just nature, you know. You can't be like, oh, the government dropped the ball here.
Yeah.
People should have been more prepared. It's like, no, that's a freak occurrence of nature. That shit happens, you know.
Well, the reason that I said you guys must do it differently down there than we do up here is I've worked with
Sorry.
municipalities before.
Yeah.
The county and usually the municipality, if it's a bigger city, all physically own snowplows. They don't contract it out to anybody else. They own plow
Oh.
trucks and they do put people to work for that. That's
Okay,
not a
see, I
contract
didn't
for
know
them.
that. I assumed that, like a lot of the things with the city, that it was contracted out to people. So I actually didn't know that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
that's
our
good to
county
know.
actually owns the snowplows and sends them out. So
The more
that's
you know.
that's where they're coming from with the socialism to the rescue idea. But that's not really socialism though either. That's more community than anything. That is, I would call a municipality putting out a perk for going there and living there and building your business there. Okay, we'll keep your roads clear if you build your business here and bring your tax money into this.
Wasn't that the initial intent of the country anyway? That each individual little sector, you know, state or city or town or whatever it was, you could, you know, collect taxes. You know, we have this catchphrase in libertarianism that taxation is theft, as though there were no kinds of taxation that people might agree to. Because I think that if someone came to my door with a piece of paper that said, hey, we're raising taxes, we'd like to raise taxes for roads, it'd be like, cool. Park? Yes. School? Yes. We'd like to bomb the shit out of Yemen. I don't think I'd like to do that one. So it would be much, much harder for these like smaller entities to kind of like raise these Leviathan level of taxes to create the kind of destruction that we see our large governments creating today. So I don't oppose the idea at all of like a municipality owning a snowplow that was bought with voluntarily offered money.
Well, on the other side of that too, I mean, it's the same thing. If somebody came to the door and said, "Okay, well, we want to fund a park," like you said, we say, "Oh, okay, we want to put roads in," and by principality, I would have to say, "Fuck that! I hate roads."
Fuck
But
these
no.
hoe-ass roads.
Fuck these hoe ass roads.
But in all seriousness on that, though, I would probably say, yeah, okay, well, build a road up to my building so I can go and drive to work. I'd be okay with that. But
Yeah.
okay, bomb the shit out of Yemen. That's a different thing than, okay, well, we want to take part of your income and give it to these people who don't want to work.
Yeah, no.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely not.
I think that's part of why I haven't gone like full anarchist, because sometimes I'm not. I kind of can agree with this. I don't think all taxes in all ways have to be, you know, it's I do believe that taxation is theft when it's taken from you without thought. The way that taxation is done now, it is theft. But I would be perfectly fine with consumption tax, where you know that when you're supporting something, when you're buying something that you choose to buy, you're being taxed,
Yeah.
and or that money is going towards this or that, in that kind of way. So I don't
In
want to
a, oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, because there's certain
Sorry.
things like I would
Just
say,
excited.
you know, if I had a choice, would I pay taxes for public schools? I don't know. I think they're terrible. I think I would like to, if I could make that choice every year and we reevaluated it every year, every 5 years, that's where taxation starts to really grind on me at that point, because you're taxed for something and then you're taxed for it into perpetuity, whether that thing continues to be a good thing or a bad thing, whether those schools decline or whether they go up, whether that road crumbles or whether the infrastructure is kept up. And that's the biggest issue that I have, is that we never stop and reevaluate because the machine's so big that there's no way to do that without just completely stopping everything.
So if we stopped and reevaluated, which I think would be a novel idea because we don't do that, we would realize that the taxes that we're paying aren't going towards our roads or our schools or anything like that. That money is being borrowed from our grandchildren's grandchildren. And all we're doing now is paying the interest on the massive and growing national debt. So that aside, I do think there is to go back to the idea of the voluntary tax system, I think there would be, you would agree with some taxes that I wouldn't, and vice versa. So in a voluntary tax system, it would be like you could pay that and I could choose not to. And if there were enough of you who would say, yeah, I am going to give my $2 to this or my $3 to that, you could raise the money. And if there were more of me and they couldn't raise the money, well, then that thing wouldn't get funded, but it would operate according to the markets and what people felt that they could afford. And if they looked around them and said, we do have a homeless problem, I do want to put some money into a program that I feel would work for this or whatever. And so a community could decide for itself what was right for that community. And the more you scale that up, of course, you have central planners that want to decide that for you, when it's really the people who live in the community who should decide that for themselves and would be best able to do that because they know what their needs are.
Basically, just crowdfunding whatever you want to get done. Yeah.
Dead on.
Absolutely.
And I
totally
agree
down
with
for
that. I don't know that it would be a tax though then anymore, because it's not.
No, it wouldn't be.
Levied.
Maybe not.
It would.
I mean, there could still be like a sales tax, but even then, you'd have to figure out like which of your dollars is going where and which of everyone else's dollars is going where.
Yeah.
So that'd be a little bit more complicated, I think.
I think
it could be like. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say maybe they send you something in the mail and it's got a lot of little check boxes on it. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna fund the park and I'm gonna fund the road sign.
Yes.
And sure, I'd like some grass put here and this, that, and the other thing. And now I'm gonna skip bombing Yemen. That's not really in my moral authority to do that. And I think you'd have a hell of a time raising the kind of money that it would take to do a starvation. What's that, hon?
And you should. And you should have a hell of a time.
You should, yeah, because none of that would be funded if the government couldn't just steal it from us. None of us would agree to do this mayhem that they're doing in the Middle East.
Do you guys think that the reason why we allow, as a whole, as a country, to be taxed the way we're taxed, to know if you talk to any person, if you put 100 people and line them up and say, do you trust politicians? Do you trust this money? 99 out of 100 of them will all say, no, that money's not going where we think, but they'll still vote for those people. They'll still put it in. Do you think that the reason why we let this go on is just collective laziness? That it's just easier to let it happen?
That sounds like something that they accuse Kavanaugh of saying to Ford.
I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call it laziness.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I was like, associated with that.
I have offended myself.
Please remove yourself from the stream, sir. But yeah, I wouldn't call it laziness as much as I would call it like First of all, I mean, without the negative connotation of it, ignorance, not knowing that there could be a different way. Just having that thought not occur to them, not that someone's stupid, right? There's a difference.
Yeah, no, you don't know what you don't know.
Right, exactly. So I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of, I guess, fear when it comes to some kind of radical change like that. It's like, okay, we're doing okay with our system knowingly corrupt as it is. We're doing okay with it. We're kind of heads above water. We're all right. Let's not rock the boat too much more. So I think there's a little bit of both of those in
Yeah,
there.
I would agree with the fear thing because I think the people that need the help the most tend to be the ones that cling a lot of times to the government helping them, even though they have to see that the people that are in charge are getting way more benefit than they are. Um, and it's just, it has to be, I guess, fear more than laziness, I would say. So I'll correct myself that because it's like, well, this is the best it can be. What else? What do I do if I say I don't want this because I'm already barely surviving, and then if I go against the grain, then what do I do? Because I think that it is hard to, I guess, maybe see a different way of doing things, a way that is like totally different from what you've been told for so long, and and see if that pans out for you when it's your real life. When we're go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think there's something to that because people don't know how to take care of themselves, and that's not entirely their fault. They weren't raised. People who did know that, they were taught that by their parents, and we haven't passed that knowledge on. So it's like, who would take care of me? Who would feed me? Who would make all the machines run and keep the lights on if all this wasn't going on? And they can't see the larger picture that we would still do all of those things.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, yeah, we wouldn't just like go back to living in the woods. It's like you don't start back at the woods. You're still going to live in your house. It's just things are going to shift around a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's why I kind of was became disillusioned with the right and the left because I see things that it's like uh just like taking like a school for example, something like that, where like I said, I don't necessarily think public schools are doing well. I think we need to reevaluate things. On the other hand, I also wonder about things that are meant to protect kids, like schools saying if you have leftover fruit, you can't leave it in a bowl for a kid that needs to eat. Uh, but I could see where somebody that's dependent on the government needing that public school because that's how they get their breakfast and their lunch, being like, well, I need this. So if I go against the grain and say this isn't the best option, but maybe, doing some things where we rely on people and charity seems scary. I could see where people might be afraid to kind of like turn that corner. And I think it goes back to us talking about volunteerism and kind of proving and showing that, being in your community and helping and passing those values on to the next generation, why it's so important to pass those values on as opposed to values that trust the government. They will help you, just bow to what the government says because they're going to come in crisis. I think it's really important to kind of pass on that level of like you have a responsibility yourself, but you also have a responsibility to the people in your community.
Yeah.
And then not in a forced way, but just something that's ingrained in you as being a person. I think people got along just fine for millennia doing that.
Right. I'm probably gonna need to bounce out for a little while, you guys. Do I? I can come back later though.
Yeah, you'll
Okay.
have the link and you can jump in the same way. Robert can bring you back in because he got to have permission to pop in, but Robert can bring you back in.
Okay, so just use the link that you sent me before.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll see you cool cats later.
All right,
Hey,
see ya.
Jessica.
Bye.
Thank
Actually, Ed, you're the host right now.
Oh, do I have the permission to bring somebody in?
You do.
What do you think being the host is? What do you think I gave you the power for?
I didn't know you gave that to me. I didn't see it on the menu bar until just now.
I just told you before I left I was going to put.
All
You
right,
kids,
ladies.
you kids don't
Not-
listen these days. That's the problem with you kids. Now get off my goddamn lawn.
Right?
I think I have about 12 minutes at the top of the hour. I'm going to go. I have to make sure my husband can feed our children. They've been in the back room all day eating snacks. So,
Yeah, how was that
I
half
don't think
hour?
I can, huh?
How was that half hour?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw him walking by earlier saying, fuck this shit.
Yeah, we had a husband docs.
He was a little frustrated. But I mean, if you guys want me to come back after I mom for a while, then I can. It's up.
Absolutely.
We had a great
got
conversation. You can come back whenever. The link will be the
Yeah,
same.
Yeah,
we're
we've
gonna
got a
be
game
we're
to
gonna be
play.
here till midnight.
All right. All right, then I will go. I don't know what to do. Do I just log out and
If you right
There's on
click,
the
you can
bottom
say,
right. There's
yeah.
leave meeting on the bottom right of the screen.
okay. Yeah, I see it. All right, guys, thanks so much. I'll see you later.
Cool, Britt. We'll see you in a bit.
Yep.
Bye.
All right, see ya. And then there were 3.
Yeah, that was quite the half an hour, huh?
Yeah.
What half an hour? What happened?
They were
I
supposed to be here
invited
for
Britt
half
on
an hour,
because
apparently.
just for a half an hour because I figured that's what our guest slots were going to be, and I thought there were going to be more. Instead, we wound up having a conversation for 5 hours.
And this is when you find out people just don't have anything else to fucking do. I mean, what
Yeah.
else are they gonna do?
It is the quarantine, after all.
They're gonna go catch a movie? No. Well, the girls were cool,
Yeah,
Yeah, we
he
actually came
experienced a girl for the first time.
right?
He's married, dude. Oh man. Wow.
So you're saying his wife has experienced a girl for the first time too? Or what?
I
Maybe.
suppose. I don't know. But yeah, we have a I came up with a game. I'll take credit for it. It's fine. I came up with a game that we should play later. Possibly with Matt Christensen, who should be coming on soon. I'm waiting to hear from him. Where we take some kind of like random, just mundane thing or like a concept, and decide how it is racist. So we put our lefty caps on and decide how something is racist. Yeah.
Well, that
sounds
sounds
fun.
interesting. So, like J. Edgar, how is Ed racist, right? Oh,
Yes.
well, because you said
'Cause
mundane.
Right, because of the hard R's that he drops all the time. That's why he's racist.
He's J. Edgar.
I got chat
J.
sitting over
Edgar.
here. No, the only reason I'm racist is because I have a flag of freedom behind me. That's
Oh, that
automatically
too, yeah.
racist.
Let me see.
Isn't that what this used to be?
Yeah, that's racist too, by the way.
That used to be something.
They're all racist. All flags.
all flags are racist.
Yeah, well, because the concept of flags promotes white supremacy and just whiteness in general.
What about a
'cause, you
Black
know-
Panther flag?
No, the flag. The concept of a flag itself, right? Because whenever you go and conquer something, right, you put your flag on it, right? So you're colonizing something and you're changing, how that place is perceived, right? That's colonialism, which is of course whiteness, which of course promotes white supremacy. So therefore, it is racist. The concept of a flag at all, because of course, we shouldn't be different nations and stuff. It should just be like the world.
So, and in that concept, does the majority race of the country factor
Doesn't matter.
into that?
No,
Okay.
because the flag. I'm saying the concept of a flag, of having a flag, is.
I just didn't know if that only applied to like white conquest or if it applied to all conquest.
Well, yeah. There's only whiteness. That's the only racist thing. So.
All right, I'll be right
the fact
back.
that. All right. But yeah, see, I can play this game, dude. I'm good at this game.
Well, yeah, because you made it up.
Well, okay, but I'm not like making up rules for it, other than the one thing. Just the idea of it. That's it. Jesus.
Yeah, no, I like I said, it's I get the concept. I don't know. It's a matter of whether or not you're being ironic about the concept, or if
Well, of course,
if
you're being
you
ironic
feel-
about it.
Well, I didn't know. I mean, I mean, I'm not saying I can't say that that's not a school of thought for some people because
See,
you try
Mitchell
and
knew where I was going with it. The concept of nationhood is inherently white.
is it really?
Yeah, according to
I
leftist
mean,
theory. Yeah.
okay, so is that like okay? So that's what I'm saying. Is that more like conspiracy minded rhetoric, or is that like some historical rhetoric? Is what I guess of what I'm getting at.
I mean, it's more contemporary rhetoric than
Gotcha.
yeah.
So anyway, folks, hey, what hour are we at, John? What time is it? It's going on
It's
seven
almost
o'clock.
7. Yeah, so
We've
almost
got about 5
7 hours.
more hours of this left. So let's remind these people, John, what we're doing and where we're going and what's going on. And
Yes, we are doing a 12-hour stream for raising money for what is it, Team Rubicon?
correct.
Yeah, to benefit first responders and medical workers who are obviously having a very difficult time at the moment. In case you guys didn't notice,
Brave individuals, no less,
yeah, yeah.
because a lot of them could just sit the fuck at home.
Oh, dude, nice StarCraft reference there, Spartacus.
Nice,
Carrier has arrived. Yeah, dude.
nice.
Anyway, um, but yeah, so the link, I'll put the link there to donate in the chat right now. And we have some, there we go. We have some like incremental rewards that we're doing where which we're almost to 500 once we reach $500. Our buddy Stephen Ignoramus, who's currently in the chat but will be on the show again soon, uh, he will be writing a song based on, he says a discussion will ensue. Um, but basically, whatever we decide for him to write a song about, he's going to write a song about that and play it on the air.
And that's
So,
no small thing. That's no
right,
small
that's,
thing
yeah,
to
that's a
like.
skill.
He says he can have a song put together within 1 hour, totally off the cuff, and I'm like, wow.
Serious discussion and national discussion. That's
What did
right.
he say? Why should we give a shit if someone responds first? Shouldn't we celebrate those who arrive first?
I suppose, yeah, that's fairly true. Um, but anyway, I don't know. If you ask women though, they don't usually like the ones who arrive first. Ha, bazinga.
I
Anyway,
got here just in time to hear that horrible joke.
that was a terrible joke. I know. That's why I said it.
I felt I had to give an obligatory chuckle.
Uh, oh, here we go.
Here we
Uh-oh.
go.
Here we go. What?
I finally heard from Matt. So let's see. Link to the stream. Can you? I got it. I'll link it to the stream. How do I link him to the other thing?
In the
Meeting.
in the group conversation,
Oh yeah.
Robert's
Okay.
got
Gotcha.
a link up there for the Zoom call. You'll give it to him, and then one of the two of us can pull him in.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it'll say copy URL, and then you can just throw it over to Matt, and he can join in.
Sweet.
Let's all act like we don't know who he is.
No.
Damn it!
I want to play my everything is racist game with Matt. I think that'll be fun. Stream.
Well, don't forget, we need at least 5 minutes of talking to him to find out who the fuck he thinks he is. I mean, find out how he's doing. That's what I meant. Yeah. See, Wall, you are more than welcome to crash this party just in maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Man, I was already telling him privately to wait. Calm down, Seawall. We have plenty of time.
I mean, in our defense, Matt has it in his writer that no half track drivers be in the chat with us on the stream with us. So
It was in the contract.
Yeah. So
the contract, though, I thought he just built it into his writer.
No, we had to go through the agent and everything.
Damn. See the things we go through for you people? Please donate. We're putting it out there. We're signing contracts and pandering to egos. I mean, come on.
How are you doing, Spartacus?
Okay.
Welcome on in.
Not sure if that link's gonna work.
It should. It's the right one.
Yeah, it's more about operator error and not the actual. I said copy link, so hopefully it'll work. He'll let me know, I suppose.
Well, Ed will know whenever he pops up as a invite.
Oh, you stripped yourself entirely on this too.
Yeah, he does that. You got to be careful with that.
I didn't strip
Curious
anything.
question: how much show
I
song?
just made you the host.
Wasn't it 500 show song, Steven?
Show song is 500.
Well, we got to shout out Seawall because it looks like he gave us $50.
I was just about to do that.
Seawall, throwing the 50.
So we are now $100 away from a Steven Ignoramus original.
Steven, I would more than willingly give you more than $500 if you even looked close to Taylor Swift. I mean, you got to factor in some things, okay?
Well, he's probably got more tits than she does.
Wow. Is he fat or is she just titless or
She's
both?
titless.
Oh, okay. Didn't I see your Marxist screed? I did.
Listen,
But I was busy, midget. I was just busy dealing with emails, and I'm a busy guy. I'm an important guy. A lot of people want to talk to me.
Oh my God! Shut up. And I'll definitely get off my fucking lawn.
Taylor Swift got a bigger D than I do. Thank you, Stephen, for that mental image.
And now, and there you go. Another point against you.
Okay, 1 second. I'll be right back. All right.
All right. You're
leaving, but what if Matt shows up?
He's got to pee. Which has actually been my problem this whole stream, too.
Good God, Ed, you don't have to put it out there for everybody to know. But seriously, folks, we do appreciate the donations that have been coming in. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely.
And we're glad you're doing it. We've had quite a few people on here. I want to give a shout out to our man Jay Ed here for stepping in and helping out with the technical difficulties that were going on early on, and Stephen Ignoramus as well. Massive love there. The Freedom Scoop boys know how to come together and make a thing work. So give mad props to them. Make sure if you haven't done it already, you're subscribed to their channels, and that we're getting some likes on this, and show these boys some love. And hey, just for shits and giggles, throw it out there. Grab the link to this stream and throw it out there on your Twitter, in your social media, and let's get some more people in here that can help us get somewhere near our goal of helping these folks. We're, like I said, any amount helps, but we'll pander for as much as we can possibly get, because there are people out there doing what we are not. And if this is the way we do it, well, John does it a little bit, but he kind of does it in a closed space. So it's I don't know. You don't have to agree with everything that's going on, but we can come together and agree that the circumstances warrant that something happen, right? Would you agree, Ed?
I would agree. Absolutely. Sorry, I was getting a new link in case the other one was not working because it didn't look like it was.
Anderson Pooper.
Wait, what happened?
I just got you another link in case the other one wasn't working because I don't know if it was or not, but I just generated a new one. So.
Ooh, Spartacus made a good point. And I have to agree with that, Spartacus. The worst thing for a fat chick being fat and having no tits, that is absolutely true, because it really just...
Yeah.
It makes you go, wait a minute.
Well, I mean, that's a general rule of thumb anyway. Like, the gut should never be bigger than the tits. That's always an issue, in my opinion, at least.
Right. Unless you're a man. Like, in a man, that's what you want,
well,
though.
Of course.
Like, if you're going to have a gut, it needs to be bigger than the tits.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what ACO is, by the way, so...
ACO and Andrea Ocasio, or what is her name?
AOC, not.
Oh,
ACO.
is it? Maybe he mistyped it. I would. That's what I was.
We've got a guest coming in.
That's a 4chan thing.
Oh, who is that? Who the hell is that?
There he is.
What's up, Matt?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hi.
How's it going?
Hi, Matt.
How's the stream been?
Long.
It has
What
been
time? What time did you guys start?
7 hours ago, noon our
Yeah.
time.
Do you take any breaks, or you just keep going?
Just
We
kept
kind of
going
we kind of get up once in a while. If you need to go to the bathroom or something, just go.
one at a time.
There's enough people here, so yeah.
Sir, no sacrifice is too small in a situation like this.
Yeah.
It's true.
Matt, how are you doing, sir? How have things been?
Oh, just like anybody else, just getting through it. Just trying not to be annoyed with the state of the world. Things aren't that bad, of course, in my part of the country.
Really?
No, I mean, we have, I'm in the hot spot of Montana, hot spot. And there are, I think, just over 100 known cases in the county. Up until recently, there wasn't even anybody hospitalized. And we've had like six statewide deaths in a geographically gigantic state. So the governor's still doing the crackdown thing. We're still, ruining everyone's job and destroying their livelihood and all that, of course. But as far as quality of life, it's not too bad. Just annoyed with the overreaction. That's all.
Yeah.
So you would agree that this is an overreaction, huh?
Well, in my opinion, certainly in my state, and the one thing that I've been glad about is that at least the federal government has refrained from treading, so to speak. The federal government's got their guidelines, but they're not the ones cramming things down your throat. It's still the states making these decisions. If I lived in New York or New Jersey, I probably have a different take on things, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to work. Not all states and localities have the same problems or interests or anything like that. I'm mostly annoyed with governors like mine who look at a state like mine, which is clearly not in an emergency, and don't have the balls to say it's not that bad. We're going to take some precautions, but we're not going to destroy people's livelihoods in response. Instead, he's opted to shut everything down and extend it for another 2 weeks. Meanwhile, our neighboring states like South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, they don't have these stay-at-home orders. Everybody tells me our governor is preventing an emergency here. He's stopping the spread. He's stopping the emergency. Well, they don't have an emergency in North Dakota, South Dakota, or Wyoming. Very comparable states, and they're not doing this. They have about the same confirmed cases, about the same deaths. So, yeah, it's just the whole thing has been a really fascinating political episode. Not only because of how the states are choosing to manage this, and how suddenly Trump, who is a fascist in all other contexts, isn't fascist enough now, but also just the way it's breaking. I mean, I don't think there are clear ideological lines here. There are people whose opinions I respect and understand who are totally on the other side of this from me. And normally we agree on almost everything. And that's true with progressives. That's true with libertarians and conservatives. I've seen weird, I don't want to say alliances, but just weird combinations of agreement and weird adversaries in how
strange bedfellows, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, that begs a question then from the chat. So, if states are getting too tyrannical on the virus, do you back the Fed stepping in to shut that tyranny down?
Well, that's a great question. I think this is
Thank you, Stephen.
The fundamental question. Constitutionally, the question is, does the Bill of Rights extend to the states? And as a practical matter, a lot of the state constitutions just reiterate their own versions of the Bill of Rights, essentially. But there's a good argument out there. I'm not a constitutional scholar, guys, so I don't know. But from what I understand, there's a good argument out there that the Bill of Rights was never actually intended to extend to your relationship with your state. It's up to your state to try to do that, to implement its own Bill of Rights, so to speak. And if that's the case, then there's no constitutional conflict here at all. It's up to your state to exercise its police power and manage this issue how it sees fit. But on the other side of this, I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that the Bill of Rights extends to the states. That is the common understanding in every other context of law that we have right now. And what I would say, too, is we have to have some common set of values to exist as a country. I mean, I'm all for states' rights and states' rights to exercise their own police powers. But if we take that to the extreme extent, then what is the common set of values that we all share to build a country upon in the first place? I know I'm not giving necessarily a super clean answer right here, and that's because I think there are good arguments on both sides of it. But if I have to take a position, I don't think it's unreasonable to extend the Bill of Rights to the states and say that the federal Constitution supersedes all. That those are the conditions for membership in the union.
Mm-hmm.
Upholding the Bill of Rights is a condition of participation. I don't think that that's wrong, but there's a case on the other side of it too.
Do you think that not necessarily just from the federal level, but at the state level as well, that that a grab for power is being made in this that will supersede the virus once it goes away?
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, so wouldn't that beg that the federal government get more involved then to stop that power grab?
This is what's crazy, is because I can't say that you're wrong in the face of uncertainty and just the unknown, which is what we've been facing here. I can't say that it's irrational to be overly cautious and to be better safe than sorry, that kind of general idea. I don't think that that's insane, but what's really bothering me now is we're seeing the data start to improve in many ways. I know that the deaths are still high, but we are seeing obviously a rapid decline in hospitalizations in New York. And broadly across the country, the data are not living up to the doomsday forecasts. I mean, just in a week's time, they've been downgraded from 250,000 if we socially distance perfectly to maybe 60,000, maybe a quarter of that is more accurate. Anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought. What bugs me is, as we're seeing the data improve, we're still seeing people like Fauci go out there and say, well, we actually have to double down on the restrictions. We have to push the accelerator harder, he was saying this morning. And you're seeing it all over the states. Now masks are mandatory in certain jurisdictions. They just shut down all the golf courses in New York. Even though things look like they're improving from a data perspective, and we're no longer operating in the unknown and the uncertain, and we have data to look at and evaluate, the crackdowns still continue. And to me, that makes me wonder, what has this been about the whole time? Because if it's just let's look at the data, let's evaluate scientifically, and let's adjust our response as more information becomes available, it doesn't make sense to me to continue the crackdowns in ever more draconian fashion.
I've got another question out of the chat here for you.
Well, real quick before you do that, though, we just got another $70 donation from Sean Sprouse. So
Nice.
Thank you very much. That is awesome.
And where is your guys' is your donation thing live only, or can people do it after the fact?
Yeah, no, we've had it set up. They've been before and after. I will probably leave it going probably till our next show Friday, a week from today. I think I'll leave it up for about a week. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to wait too long and like miss the end of the virus, as it were.
I'd like to make a donation before I take off, and then I'm going to post this over on our stuff, the audio. So if people are listening and they want to help out your cause,
absolutely.
You can give me the link later, I suppose, and I can just include it in the description. But is it easy to shout out if people are listening and they want to do that?
Is what easy to shout out?
Just like where my listeners can go contribute to this thing if they want to.
Well, the GoFundMe is basically named the same thing as the Freedom. It's a Freedom Scoop fundraiser for first responders.
Gotcha.
But there is a link, a tiny URL there in the description below this stream that is quick and easy to put out there as well.
Okay.
I've been throwing it in the chat here too, every now and again.
Yep. But the main thing is Freedom Scoop fundraiser for first responders is what they would look for on.
Is there last time there was a beard shaving?
If we can hit 20, yes.
As you can see, it didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
But we're at 2,500 for tonight.
Yeah, we told everybody at 2,500, Matt Christensen would shave his beard.
That's what we said. Yeah.
I didn't agree to those terms. Are you guys? Are you
we're
guys close?
in a
You
state
got
of
a ways to
emergency.
go. What's the status?
We got a ways to go. We're at 470 at the moment.
All right.
But the thing is, at 500, our buddy Stephen Ignoramus. So I think you've been on his show before. He's gonna write a song in an hour. He has 1 hour to write a song and perform it.
Wow, he's pretty good though. I know he
really
does
good,
some music, and I'm sure he can do it.
Oh yeah,
he's pretty damn good with that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
he's been watching the numbers. He's like, oh no.
Is he going to perform it on your show? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
Yeah,
he's going to
yeah.
put it up here and everything.
Gotcha.
All right, so question for Matt. This is from Dangerous Spaces, actually. As an
yeah.
Aussie, is this an extension of Dems' seeming disdain for the states? They seem to want to abolish the state-by-state system of the Electoral College, for example.
It is weird. It's kind of what I was referencing earlier, that they hate Trump. They don't want Trump to do anything, but they want Trump to seize power now and Trump to supersede the states and take them all over. Which is weird because I thought like hatred of Trump was their number one guiding principle above all else.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, their disdain for states' rights or state power, as in the individual states as opposed to the federal government, appears to be stronger than their hatred of Trump. One of the few things where they say, you know what? Actually, we do want Trump to have control in this context. We don't want states to have power. So maybe, I mean, we know that there's a disdain for federalism generally. We see the opposition to the Electoral College. We see the opposition to the Senate. That's undemocratic. States don't matter. All that stuff.
Well, you did the solo video, too, about them saying that he's a soft dictator. Was that how it went?
There was a Politico article that called him an authoritarian weak man, which is what a hot take. What a clever.
How the fuck does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the same people who've been screaming that this guy is a dictator for years are now questioning him not exercising his apparent dictatorial powers or wanting him to have dictatorial powers. And the few, like I said, the few bright spots I see in how this was handled is I don't think Trump has handled it perfectly. I think that some of the communication at the start was not great, to be honest. But I think generally he has adopted the proper role of what the head of the executive branch of the federal government should do, which is just issue recommendations, issue guidelines, and then be there to be a support mechanism for the states. And has it been executed perfectly? Maybe there was a ventilator here or there that was needed or something. But generally speaking, I think the response has been pretty good from the White House, in my opinion.
Well, what would you say to the argument that by letting states exert their authority in how they handle this, and the federal government at the same time trying to mandate parts of this, leads to confusion in the country, as opposed to him stepping up, taking control of all of it, and laying down mandates countrywide?
Well, confusion and mistakes are almost a guarantee. The idea that we're going to have one person manage everything to perfection, I think is pie in the sky type thinking. So you decentralize the power, you decentralize the mistakes, and I think at some level having duplicative. If it is duplicative, if it is just having multiple people responsible for the same thing, sometimes that's a good thing. What's the problem with having New York prepare for a disaster and the federal government prepare for a disaster? If one of them screws up, you've got another person to fall back on. The only thing, and that's just in terms of preparedness. But if you're talking like issuing directives or who's the boss, well, at some level, states have to matter. Otherwise, right. Why do we bother with having 50 of them? If all they do is just look to Trump to handle everything, then their position is really irrelevant. It's unneeded.
Well, it's hard for me. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, I was going to say, just by way of example, you brought up New York. To point to that, as soon as things started at the beginning of the blow up in New York, you saw a mass exodus of tons of people pouring out of New York and heading to Florida. So here we are in Florida, and it's like, oh shit, you're bringing this to us. Well, because our state says this, your state says that. We had to put mandates in place here to stop people from coming to New York without going into quarantine, that kind of thing. You have these reactions, whereas one overarching federal regulation as to how we handle this might have stopped some of those things from happening.
Well, I suppose, but again, I would say that mistakes are inevitable, and I want accountability for them. Like same thing where I complain about my governor, and I think his poor handling of this issue in our state. At least my vote for him it matters more than my vote for president. At least his accessibility to me is greater than Donald Trump's accessibility to me. And I think that the more we manage things at a local level, a state level, the more say you have in mitigating and correcting those mistakes where you see them. This particular thing about interstate travel is kind of it's a new thing as far as I'm aware. Maybe you guys can remember past examples, but I can't remember a time where states were almost acting like their own country, like their borders are their own country borders, so to speak.
Right.
Where they're trying to say, we're gonna screen residents of other states coming in, and if we find you, we're gonna quarantine you and all that. I don't know, and maybe there was another time in history where we've done that. That's an interesting question constitutionally too. Do the states have the authority to police U.S. citizen traffic across their borders and reject it or apply conditions to it?
Well, realistically,
I don't know.
constitutionally, that would be the only aspect the federal government would have in any of this would be the interstate commerce, the travel between the states.
Yeah, and that's not who's managing it. Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of it in that way, like because it's not necessarily commerce, but it is an interstate issue for sure.
But
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well,
No, I was disagreeing.
That's what's interesting though, is it's not, it's, I guess the argument would be that the federal government ought to have some say in that, as it's an interstate matter. But instead it's, Rhode Island or Florida in your case, who's like,
Right.
No New Yorkers, sorry.
Right.
We don't
Well,
like them anyway at the best of times. So
I can't cast a vote for the mayor of New York who let people leave his state full of the virus, right? So I don't have anybody accessible that I can hold accountable for that because not my
You
state.
You got DeSantis. You can lobby DeSantis to say ban the New Yorkers if that's.
Which he took the initiative and did that. He didn't ban them, but he forced quarantine on anybody coming in from New York for 2 weeks.
Yeah. That there's so many really fascinating legal puzzles that are going to come out of this. And I do hope that a lot of this stuff gets challenged, not even necessarily because I'm looking for a particular outcome, but because mostly state governments are just freestyling it right now. They're just like, throwing darts at the board. Like, can we get away with that? Can we get away with this? Let's try it. Who cares? There's really no precedent. And I would like the Supreme Court to weigh in on some of these questions, just so next time we have some idea, some framework of which parts of these things are constitutional and which of them are just trashing the Constitution. I think these questions are really interesting, and I hope we get that benefit after all this is said and done.
Yeah, I will say that I was expecting when he began the talk early on, calling this a war against the virus. I expected that he was going to take war power measures. And it didn't really happen. He went ahead and let the states continue to do as they needed to on a state-by-state basis.
Yeah.
But, Ed, you were going to ask a question?
Well, I was going to go on with what you had said about the one-size-fits-all thing because, looking at the response to New York needs to take this seriously and clamp down on this because of the way that New York City has been affected, whereas it's not the same here in Wisconsin, and from what I understand, California, which is just about as densely populated or Los Angeles rather, I should say, about as densely populated as New York City, doesn't see nearly the caseload, so they don't need the same kind of response to any of this.
Yeah, and California fascinates me because we know the data from flights from China that have come into this country in December, January, February, it was in the hundreds of thousands still. And even Wuhan specifically, I don't know the exact figure for Wuhan specifically, but there were plenty of flights coming into mostly the West Coast, heavily California. And we the first confirmed cases of coronavirus were in California before the first confirmed cases were in New York. California did crack down a few days before New York did. But there's something else going on here to explain why New York is in a much, much worse place than California broadly, or even LA or San Francisco specifically. And it just it really makes me wonder how much the lockdown stuff has been effective. And I'm sure it probably is more effective in a place like New York, where people are literally living right on top of each other.
Right, that population density.
But when you talk about Montana, South Dakota, and social distancing is the default state of life. I am serious when I say that. I was mentioning this on Sunday. When you close down all the bars and restaurants and stuff around here, I'm not convinced that doesn't actually cause greater congregation of people, because suddenly everybody goes to the groceries. I've never seen worse crowding at the grocery stores now. And that's just because nobody's eating at a restaurant and nobody's going to the bar. Nobody's really doing anything else when they go out other than going to the grocery store. And everybody's huddled around and everybody's using the same keypad. And I'm just not convinced in my state. Again, I don't pretend to know everything for everybody's circumstance, because they're all different. But in my state, I am not convinced that shutting down all these quote unquote non-essential businesses arbitrarily is necessarily making people safer. You know what happened last night that really pissed me off? Our guy, Steve Bullock, he ran for president. Nobody ever remembers him, but he did run. And because he declared, he did the stay-at-home order like 2 weeks ago, non-essential businesses ordered closed. He tweeted out, or not tweeted, he made a formal state declaration, just like it was a disaster, like an emergency declaration or a stay-at-home order. But he made a formal state declaration with the state of the seal of Montana about how the Easter Bunny is an essential worker. And the Easter Bunny
my God.
can go around and the holiday won't be ruined. And everybody, all the Karens and Susans responding to him are saying, thank you for cheering up the children on this holiday. And I'm the only one thinking, well, there are a few other people, the few other people who live in my state and think like I do. I'm like, what a cute way to destroy the livelihoods of the children's parents. Thank you. This is very cheerful. We all, my God, man, it's like, well, this is a great way to cheer people up. Well, why do people need cheering up? Because you're the guy who destroyed their jobs. That's why. It infuriated me, and some people were telling me I was overreacting, but I hated that move. And not to mention, I guarantee there was at least an hour. This thing is formal. It's a page long. It's all bulleted and itemized and formalized. I know he didn't personally write it, but I guarantee there's at least an hour of someone's labor in this stupid ass document.
Oh, yeah.
So I've got another question for Matt. I got a statement from Dangerous Spaces because he added me, so I'm sure he wants it read out here. This is a good part of living on a massive island. We have a miles-wide moat around our entire country here in Australia. And then Stephen Ignoramus asks, what would it take for you to support Biden?
For me to support Biden?
It's a question for Matt. That's what it says.
I'm not
vote blue no matter who, man. Come on.
I don't think there's a way. I mean, I don't know. I'm not the greatest. I'm not the biggest Trump cheerleader in the world, but I think he's done enough to earn my vote. Biden, it's not even ideological with Biden. Like, the guy's just out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I can't look to that guy and think, okay, here's a guy who's prepared to solve a crisis like this one. Not even that Trump is necessarily either. I just think Trump's smart enough to get out of the way a little bit.
So
but
sorry, I thought you were
I can't
done.
answer that question since I don't think there is a.
What if he made Ron Paul his VP?
Maybe. I saw Ron Paul was talking a lot about all this stuff this morning and or the other day about all this overreach and all that. Man, that's that would still be a dream presidency for me if we could get that guy in office.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could kind of no, maybe no, I don't know.
Are you
So-
are you considering voting Biden, or are you
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
I
I remember
absolutely
you were-
plan on voting for nobody but Mickey Mouse. There's,
Interesting.
no, seriously. I do not think that the Democrats have put forward the best candidate, and Democratic voters. I don't agree that Biden is the best candidate. I don't necessarily agree that Bernie Sanders was the best candidate, though I'd love to see that battle between him and Trump on the debate stage.
It would have been entertaining.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. For me, based on just the man himself, I can't in good conscience feel myself voting for Trump, but I have no faith in voting for Biden either. So, it's not that I won't go vote, but it would be a write-in, and I know everything that can be said about that, but I don't have faith in any of the candidates right now. I'm not even at a point where I'm willing to pick the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that's
What
why you
about
should
Joe
pick
Exotic? Right in Joe Exotic.
or Vermin Supreme.
There you go.
Wait, who's
That's
that?
who I'm talking about.
I don't
Oh
even.
man, how do you not know about this guy? Oh, he's great. He's the guy with the Wellington boot on his head,
Mhm.
and he's
No, I
offering
don't.
free ponies for everyone,
I haven't
and
heard of this. What's his name?
mandatory dental hygiene.
Vermin
Mandatory.
Supreme.
Vermin Supreme, yeah.
Berman?
Vermin, like
Vermin.
a yeah,
like
like
a
a vermin.
rat.
Yeah, Vermin Supreme. Check out his Twitter. It's pretty excellent.
He's only 58, but he looks like he's.
Like he's in his 80s. Yeah, he's great
He
though.
looks like Santa Claus did some hard drugs. That's what he looks like.
It could be.
Well, I can honestly say that I did not vote for Bernie or Biden in this past primary because that was just this past Tuesday.
Yeah, did you actually went out and voted? You defied death?
I defied death. That was
Wow.
the fastest I've ever been through a polling place. Well, I'm in a really small town too, but
Yeah.
that is literally the fastest I've ever been in a polling place. There was one other person there when I was there, and
Did you,
I'm officially
did you
a
go
Tulsi
out-
voter.
Oh, you went and voted Tulsi.
I looked at the Bernie because I wanted to sow discord. I looked at the bubble and I said, I can't fucking do it.
Well, I wish I lived in one of these earlier states so I could do the sabotage vote. I mean, we don't vote till June 2nd anyway, and now it's all going to be by mail here. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll check the box, but I don't. It's like, do I want to? It's an open primary, so I can vote for either. But
Yeah,
do I
that's the
wanna
same
vote-
here.
Vote. Yeah, I want the sabotage vote, and we don't get that just because it's too late.
Well, I kind of came up with a theory too when I thought about it really hard. Why Bernie dropped out the day after the Wisconsin primary, even though we don't have the results. He may very well have won the state. He didn't, but he may very well have. But he
Wasn't
hasn't
the
seen the
polling
results
looking
yet.
pretty bad for him though?
Well, it was, but you have to keep in mind that he was also backing the progressive Supreme Court justice that, or the not the justice, but the nominee that was up, because we had a really heavily contested Supreme Court race that was coming up. Madison Progressive versus Scott Walker appointee.
Yeah.
The Scott Walker appointee was the incumbent, so I'm pretty sure that he just stayed in to drive the vote out so people would go and vote for the lady that was running against Dan Kelly.
I see.
I can't think
Are
of her
the
name
results
right now
in
either.
yet, or did they not announce them yet?
We will not get results until the 13th because of the Supreme Court ruling on the vote by mail.
Okay. So, and 13th Monday, that's when you
Yep.
get to know? Yeah. All right.
Ooh, and that's when the first round of stimulus checks. 60 million Americans are going to get paid on Monday. They say.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. I saw the Senate has, they discovered that the 350 billion Corona bucks for small businesses is not enough. So, and now they can't get an extra $250 billion because I didn't even look at the Democrats want some other silly nonsense in this and it didn't go through. But so we'll see where that goes. But I guess now Nancy Pelosi's saying Congress is done through April. So are
What?
we? That's what I saw her say at least.
Yeah,
They're
because
gonna-
I know they were talking about a fourth bill going through, and part of that was going to be like an increase in wages for first responders and essential needs people, like to the extent grocery store employees would get a $25,000 raise. You know, like they were going to get an extra $13 an hour. They had put all this in, so I'm like, what is happening with that? What's and then it's all coming down to about what businesses are going to get money and who's
And
not.
I'm even very conflicted on these issues because on the one hand, like the government printing money and inflating all our currency and just being financially irresponsible and adding to the debt, I of course oppose all of that on principle.
Right.
But on the other hand, the damage is done to these businesses is not at all the fault of the businesses. You can view it as a damage imposed by the government, but that's even complicated still because who did it? It wasn't the feds really, other than guidance. But it's the state and local governments that have all but destroyed a lot of these businesses. Is it the federal government's response to correct that damage with money? Is it the state and local government's response to compensate for that? I don't know. But even that question is difficult to answer precisely and correctly. Are we responding the right? I mean, my preference would be stop stealing so much of our money and let us run our businesses freely, like free people. But that's not what happened. The government did go in and damage people's livelihoods. So is there a burden on government now to correct that wrong?
Well, it comes down to the fact, in my mind, that I don't think the individual states, some might, but I don't know that the states could afford the financial burden that it would take. So they would have to go to the government to get that money. They would be looking for federal government to subsidize that anyway.
Yeah.
So isn't the smarter step for the federal government to just say, fuck it, here's your tax money back, because your states aren't going to pick up the burden. They're too busy trying to, police you.
I wish, well, maybe. I wish the states might have to think twice or think a second time about that. Because if they know they can just shut down everyone's livelihood or a lot of people's livelihoods and then go ask the feds to bail them out with no consequence, well, that's just a recipe for the crazy power grabs that we're kind of seeing right now. And I don't like that. That's God, I just
well, shit, your states, a lot of states can't even figure out, like here in Florida, they can't even get the fucking unemployment website and system up and running to where people can get money. I mean, people are looking at literally not getting any of that unemployment money for another 30, 60, 90 days.
And it's also unclear on the small business front too. This trying to get the small business loans, so-called loans, as far as I understand, if you use them for payroll and the loans are forgiven or something like that. But whatever, it's all being administered by the banks. And the guidelines are so unclear, and the demand is so high that the banks are all just scrambling right now. They're all trying to get this money into the hands of these businesses, but it's so many people. That's why they're trying to pass more money too, because the money's finite. $350 billion is going to be hosed out in short order, and that's not going to be enough. So. But the other thing I don't like about this too is it's like, why should people in South Dakota be on the hook to pay the financial to make the financial correction for like the fools in California's response to this? If California,
because it's racist if you don't.
Yeah, well, the point made. Argument one, I guess. But if Eric Garcetti wants to destroy the entire city of Los Angeles, or Gavin Newsom wants to destroy his state, why is that the fault of taxpayers in South Dakota? Why should they be on the hook for that?
Because you're part of goddamn America, son.
I guess, but
we're all in this together, son.
Yeah.
Sort of, but like from a collective defense perspective. But I guess that's kind of where this gets interesting too. Like, is this collective defense? People, you mentioned the war analogy earlier. Like, is this a war in that same way, where it's the federal government's responsibility to respond to it? I don't know. I don't know that I consider that analogy perfect. I mean, I think that the federal government's primary responsibilities are to defend this country from external threats and to maintain internal peace between the states.